theyeshiva.net.
So we begin today Be'ezer Hashem a new Masechta, as you know, Rosh Hashanah. Before we begin inside, let me just give a short Hakdama, a short introduction. And that is, although, if you would ask somebody what's Masechta Rosh Hashanah, so I'll tell you probably the Masechta that deals with the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. So that's partially true, but that's only at the end of the Masechta. Part of Perek Shlishi and Perek Revi deals with what we call Rosh Hashanah, the mitzvahs of Rosh Hashanah, Tkiyas Shofar, and the Tefillas of Rosh Hashanah, etc. Actually, Masechta Rosh Hashanah doesn't deal with our Rosh Hashanah. Masechta Rosh Hashanah deals with the concept of Rosh Hashanah, which means as follows. Rosh Hashanah is not one day of the year. We have our Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of Tishrei. But there's another few Rosh Hashanahs because there's what's called the beginning of the year relative to different halachas. So for some areas, Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei. When it comes to other laws, Rosh Hashanah is a different day of the year. Now there's no way of objectively defining Rosh Hashanah because there's no particular day of the year when you could say, look what's happening, the year ended, and tomorrow a new year is going to begin. Or yesterday the year ended, today a new year began. The orbit, which we're going to learn about at length, the orbit of the sun, of the moon, of the earth, all these orbits finish after a year, but there's no one day that you could say this is when it finishes more than any other day. In other words, Rosh Hashanah, you can establish any day of the year. It's completely based on your own establishment. There's no objective day that you say this is when the cycle ended, and tomorrow we start a new cycle. At any point, you could say it ended here, it ended here, it ended here. In other words, Rosh Hashanah could be defined as any single day. And therefore, we have to have different Rosh Hashanahs. For different halachas, we have different Rosh Hashanahs, and we have to understand why for this did they establish Rosh Hashanah here, this day, and for this they established another day. But that's important to understand about Rosh Hashanah. So Masechta Rosh Hashanah doesn't deal with one Rosh Hashanah, it deals with many Rosh Hashanahs, including our Rosh Hashanah, what we call Rosh Hashanah in our vocabulary, which is the first day of the month of Tishrei. The first Perek, most of the first Perek, Taka deals with the different Rosh Hashanahs as the first Mishnah right away begins. The end of the first Perek and the second Perek, and much of the third Perek, deals with a whole other sugya, which is very lebedik and very interesting and very complex, and that is how they used to establish the first day of the month. The first day of the month, including Rosh Hashanah, and every day of the month, what was the system? For this, the Gemara delves into the whole astronomical structure, the way Yiddishkeit sees it, the way Halacha sees it, and gets into the whole process of how Bezdin would investigate the witnesses who would come to say that they saw the new moon, and all of these discussions about how the new moon works, what's the birth of the new moon, what's the Moiled, what's Rosh Chodesh, why is this day Rosh Chodesh, why is Rosh Chodesh 1 day, 2 days, Rosh Hashanah 1 day, 2 days, and all of these discussions. It also gets into the very interesting sugya of the international date line, which for most of history was irrelevant, but actually in our generation became extremely relevant because of our methods of transportation. If you cross the international date line, is also a huge sugya later in Masechta Rosh Hashanah. And then the end of Rosh Hashanah, part of Shlishi and part of Revi, this 4 chapters, deals with our Rosh Hashanah. Okay. That's just to understand the mahalach of the Masechta. So we begin the first Mishnah, Arba Rosh Hashanah Heim. So the Mishnah starts and says, Arba Rosh Hashanah Heim, there are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. So right away you see, so nicht ein Rosh Hashanahs, da 4 Rosh Hashanahs. How can there be 4 Rosh Hashanahs? As I said, there's no one day that you can objectively say, this is the beginning and yesterday was the end. What makes it? It would be similar to weeks. When it comes to weeks, what happens after 7 days that there's a new week? Sunday. What happens after 7 days? A month and a year, you could say, this is the end of a month, this is the beginning of the end of a year. Because something actually happens. The moon completes its orbit, as we will see, after 29 plus days. And after that, it starts over the orbit again. The only question is, when do you want to call Rosh Chodesh? So actually, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, you have the concept of a new moon being born, the moon being visible. The moon changes its position, so we have an objective reality called Rosh Chodesh. When it comes to the end of a year, there's 365 plus days in which it takes the orbit of the sun or the orbit of the earth to finish, and it starts all over again from the same position. The question just is, which day do you want to choose for that? You could say this is the end, you could say this is the end, you could say this is the end, you could say this is the end. So now you have to choose your Rosh Hashanah. It comes, for example, the end of a week, nothing happens after 7 days. What happens after 7 days? You could have made a week 10 days, you could have made a week 8 days, you could have made a week 2 days. Would have been nice to have a weekend every 2 days. There were those who wanted to change a week. The reason we have the week is because of Shabbos. But there's nothing objectively in the Bria that after 7 days you say a week. It's not like a month, and it's not even like a year. So a week is extreme because it's completely, nothing happens after 7 days. It's just, it would seem artificial without Shabbos. The communists tried to change a week into more days or into less days. They were different attempts, but they never lasted.
10 days.
10 days, right? In Stalin, in the 1920s, he wanted to make a week of 10 days. Because it makes more sense. 10, yeah? Complete number, 10 days. And I guess more work.
The people couldn't handle it.
It didn't work. It didn't work yet.
Romans had 9 days.
Huh?
Before the
It really
Romans
works with
they had
7 days.
9 days, yeah. Yeah. When it comes, however, to the end of a year, there is the end of a year, the beginning of a year, but which day is not clear. So we have Arba Rosh Hashanah. So you have 4 Rosh Hashanahs. The first Rosh Hashanah is Be'echad Ben Nisan. We're going to see the first day of Nisan, the first day of Elul, the first day of Tishrei, and the first day of Shvat. So it's Arba Rosh Hashanah. Maybe this 4 Rosh Hashanahs Be'echad Ben Nisan, Rosh Hashanah LeMalach. On Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you have a Rosh Hashanah for kings, for L'Regalim, and for Yomim Tovim. What's Pshat Rosh Hashanah for kings? So Rashi says LeMalachim, Regilim Hayu Limnes Man Shtareiseyem L'Shnois HaMelech. When they used to write documents, they would always put in the date of how many years the king, the present king, has been ruling. Mishana Sha'amad B'HaMelech. They would start from the year in which this king assumed the throne. So if this king was a king, this was the 10th year of his kingdom, like we have in the beginning of Megillah, right? By Hibe Me'ach HaShverish. The 3rd year, B'Shnat Shalosh L'Malchai. So on all the documents you would write, this is the 3rd year, the 4th year, the 20th year since the king assumed kingship. The Gemarah says in Masechta Gittin that they did this Mishum Shloi Malchus. In order to be at peaceful relations with the king, they shouldn't think that the Jewish people disrespect the monarch and the Malchus. So therefore, in every single star, they used to put in on the date, this is the 3rd year of the king. We don't do this. We, on a star, write the Cheshbon since the creation of the world. So you'll write this year, it's Teves, Dalet Teves, Tovshin Ayin Zayin. Tovshin Ayin Zayin. Hey, Allah from Tovshin Ayin Zayin, 5,777 years since Bria Sa'olam. Their date was not since Bria Sa'olam, since the king became a king, whatever it was, a year, 2 years, 3 years. No. So l'cha'ira, what's called the beginning of a year when the king became a king? L'cha'ira, the day he became a king. If he became a king Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so that's the new year. What if he became a king Rosh Chodesh Tammuz? So Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, that's when it starts. So every star from Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, you say, this is the 1st year of the king, and the next Rosh Chodesh Tammuz is the 2nd. That's the Chiddush of the Mishnah, that's not the case. The Chachamim established the 1st day of Nisan should be the beginning of the year. Va'afilu Amad b'Shvat oy ba'Adar. And even if Amad means he assumed the throne. Amad means he stood up as a king. He was established as a king. In the month of Shvat or Adar, Kol Sashnasim Mishigi and Nisan. The moment Nisan comes, the 1st year is done. And they start counting the 2nd year. What's the Havana of this? Why can't you just keep it consistent with reality? If he became a king Rosh Chodesh Shvat or Rosh Chodesh Adar, so the 1st year ends the next Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So the next Rosh Chodesh Shvat, you say, now is the 2nd year of the king. No. If he became a king Rosh Chodesh Shvat or Rosh Chodesh Adar, 1 month, it's already a year. If I write a shtar, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 2 months after he became a king, it's already the 2nd year of the king. That is cut-off time. This is called a new year for the king. So if Rosh Chodesh Nisan is even within a few weeks of when he became a melech, it's a new year. It's a 2nd year. It happens to be a 2nd year. It's not the 1st year because he was already a king for a few weeks, so it has to be the 2nd year. That's called Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. It's Rosh Hashanah for Malach.
Every country would be different.
What do you mean?
Every melech.
What do you mean would be different?
Whole world or
You want to know if it's Jewish kings or non-Jewish kings? So this is an interesting question. From Rashi, it's mashma that it's not Jewish kings, right? Because Rashi says, so if you look in Teves, Teves has here a big problem with Rashi. If you take a look at the second Teves L'malachim, you see? We'll take a look inside. It's a very interesting issue that he brings up. He says, Pirush B'Kuntris, Rashi says that the reason it's called Rosh Hashanah L'malachim is, the Lashon of Rashi is, Mishum Shloi Malchus. It's because of the Shalom Malchus we should have peaceful relations with the king. L'chayda, this is what Rashi is saying. He says, but ve'ena, there's a problem here. It's not true. Why? The Hachel Malchi Yisrael Kamayri. The Gemarah clearly says later that Be'echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashanah L'malachim is talking about Jewish kings, not Gentile kings. Malchi Yisrael. When Jews wrote documents for Malchi Yisrael, Be'echad B'Nisan began the new year. And the chayr, if it's Malchi Yisrael, there's no issue of Shloi Malchus, like Rashi says. And he says this idea that you have to write in the star of the time is v'davke gabe Gittin amriran hachi, Perek HaZoyrek. Rashi brought from Masechta Gittin, Tosfos is quoting. In Masechta Gittin and Perek HaZoyrek Daf Pei, it says, Amar Ula, mipnei ma tiknu Malchus, begittin, mishum Shloi Malchus. That's where Rashi got it from. The reason that in a get, the Chachamim instituted to write the time of the year of the Melech is Mitzat Shalom Malchus. Begabe Gittin Psulin Vadai. And by Gittin it's very stringent because without it it becomes disqualified. Da'afilu Malchus She'ena Higenes. Even if you wrote, if you're dealing with a Malchus She'ena Higenes, I mean a monarchy that's immoral. And he gives the example, there's different girses here. L'mashal Malchus Madai V'Yavon. Even if it's a Malchus She'ena Higenes, a Malchus She'ena Higenes, still you have to write the Zman. And even if you write V'chein, I don't know if all of you have the Tikkunim here from Hagaz V'tziyunim. Anyway, their guide is here, O Malchus Madai V'Yavon, and even Malchus Madai V'Yavon, if you write Malchus Madai V'Yavon, it's also not good, unless they are still the Malachim. In other words, if you write today, Tosfos says, Malchus Madai V'Yavon, which doesn't exist anymore, it won't be good because you have to have the Malchus of today. Our Mishnah is not talking about Shalom Malchus, it's talking about Pirush L'Shtaris. It's talking about Shtaris Stam, not Gittin. And we're not dealing with Malchei Umas HaOlam, we're dealing with Malchei Yisrael. So Tosfos here has a problem with Rashi. The Pnei Yeshua answers Rashi and says, very geschmack, that what Rashi means is also Malchi Yisrael, because the Gemarah clearly says that for Malchi Umas HaOlam it's not Nisan, it's going to be Tishra. What Rashi means as follows: because for the Jewish kings we wrote we wrote about them in our shtaris, so therefore once the Jews were in exile, or once non-Jewish kings took over Eretz Yisrael, if they wouldn't continue to write it that way, then it would compromise Shalom Malchus. If the Jewish people never wrote for their own Melachim the date of the Melech, so then they could say, we never did it. But if they did it for their own, and they're not going to do it for the other Melachim, then it would undermine Shalom Malchus. So it's not a stidus. So when Rashi says, Mishum Shalom Malchus, Kidamrina Begitin Mishum Shalom Malchus, right, that's the Vart. Because they wrote it for Jews, therefore it became Negeh to Shalom Malchus. It's Taka Emes that Rosh Hashanah Malachim for other Malachim was a different date. But because here we're talking about that they wrote it for Jews, that's why it became an issue of Shalom Malchus. If they wouldn't have write it for Jews, then what's the problem? We didn't write it for anybody, we don't write it for you. But if you wrote it for your kings and you're not writing it for our kings, then it compromises the inyan of Shalom Malchus. So he says Rashi doesn't mean that the Pshat in the Mishnah is Mitzat Shalom Malchus. It's a raya. It's a raya. When it says the Ktani l'Melachim, since they were moinish to Reisayim l'Zman HaMelech, so therefore the Gemarah says in Gittin, Mishum Shloi Malchus, if they weren't writing their own kings, was a Shalom Malchus, though we never write it in the Shtar. So what do you want? It's not disrespectful. That's how he teaches to answer Rashi. Let's finish here already. Tosfos finishes, says, V'pei kamad avodah zara amrina, the begoyla ein moinen ela l'malchi yavim b'lvad. But it says that in Golus, the Zman of Shtaris is Lamalchi Yavon, and Maskina Nami Hasam, and the Maskana over there is that Lamalachim, the Hach is Lamalchi Yisrael. When it says Malachim here, it means Lamalche Yisrael. When it comes to Malchi Yavin, it's actually Tishre. V'chein amrin lekamam beGemarah lo yishanu al Lamalchi Yisrael aval Lamalchi Umasa Olam mitishrei ma nina. Now we wonder, how could it say that we write Malchi Yavin? We said before that you need the Malchus of present. Tzarich lefarish the ain't tzarich shloi Malchus ela beget isha. When you write the melech of that time, it's only by a get. L'fisho davar gadol milsa de chashivus l'fishaydei get muteris l'chol adam v'chashim v'shar shtaris. Get is very prominent because it allows the woman to marry anybody, so it's different than any other star. And over there, the melech would want his name on it. If his name is not on it, he would feel that there's no shalom malchus. But other stars that are not so chashiv, even if you use an old malchus that was bottled, it's going to work. Okay, I'll call upon him. So this is Echad B'Nisr Rosh Hashanah L'Malach. Then you have the next one is L'Regalim. It's Rosh Hashanah for holidays, meaning Pesach is the first Yom Tov. Rashi says, Mefarish B'Gemarah Daf Dalet, who cares what is the first Yom Tov? L'maynaf Kamin, if Pesach is the first, or Shavuos is the first, or Sukkot is the first. So the Gemara is going to explain what this is negeya to. It has to do with the mitzvah of Baal Ta'acher. You're not allowed to delay karbanas that you pledged, and you have to go, you have a timeline of 3 Yomim Tovim in which to bring the Yom Tov, and it begins with Pesach. The Gemara is going to explain. Next, Be'echad Be'elul Rosh Hashanah L'Maisa Behema. The first day of Elul is a new Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah of Meiser Behema. What's Meiser Behema? What's this Rosh Hashanah for Meiser Behema? We all know there's a mitzvah essay that you have to separate as a carbon 1/10 of the new bakar, the new bulls, cows, and the new tzoin, the new flock that were born during the year. So every single year you have to take in the young sheep and the young calves into a room, and you have them in a pen, and the entrance is a narrow entrance where only one can go out at a time, and then you allow them to come out. These are all the new ones that were born during this year, and you let them come out, and every 10th, you you dye it with a red color, and it becomes kodesh. This is called carbon meiser. We speak about it every morning. Habchor, v'hameiser, v'hapesach kachim kala. What do you do with it? Hameiser nechel l'chol adam, b'chol meichel l'shnei yomim v'layla echad. You bring the animal to Yerushalayim. You offer it in the Beis Hamikdash. You can eat it. Anybody can eat it. You can invite as many guests as you want in the borders of Yerushalayim for 2 days and 1 night. That's called a carbon meiser. So it's yours. You don't have to give it to anybody. You just have to eat it as a carbon with Kedushas carbon in Yerushalayim. That's called meiser behem. When was this done? During the year. Again, in the pen you put in only those that were born that year, not the previous year, not a later year. And then you let them go out. Let's say you had 1,000 baby calves or 1,000 baby sheep that were born that year. So they all go out from the door, whatever it is, 900, 800, whatever the number is. And as a result of that, every 10th becomes meiser behema. This only applies to bakar and soin. Basically bulls, cows, and sheep. That's meiser behema. What's the Rosh Hashanah l'meiser behema? L'maynaf kamina, what the Rosh Hashanah is l'meiser behema? Because if it's each year, so you have to know when the year begins, when the year ends. So what's cutoff time? So he says cutoff time is Chavtes Av. Rosh Chodesh Elul is a new year. So in other words, if I had a sheep that was born Chavtes Av, it can go into the pen with the new group. It has to go into the pen with the old group. That's what Rashi is going to explain. You can give meiser from all the babies that were born this year for those that would be born in another year. You cannot do that. The ksiv, because the pasuk says in Parshas Re'eh, aser to aser twice. Aser to aser is called v'ozarecha yotzi asada shana shana. You should give meiser from all the grain of your seed that comes out of the field year by year. V'omar mar b'bchodes b'pedek meiser behema. So the Gemarah says in Masechta B'chodes b'shtei meiser sakasav medaber. It says aser to aser. Why twice? Because it's talking about 2 meisers. Echad meiser behema, echad meiser dagan. One is for grain and one is for animals. And here you see shana shana. It has to be year by year. So since it has to be year by year, so therefore I can't separate meiser behema from that which was born 1 year. for behemoths that were born another year, and therefore all the behemoths in the pen from which I'm doing Ma'aseh Behema have to be those that were born in 1 year. It has to be Shana. You can't mix the two. So Chav Tes Av is cutoff time. Rosh Chodesh Elul, anything that's born from Rosh Chodesh Elul till next Rosh Chodesh Elul, this is 1 year. From this group, I have to give Ma'aseh. If I start putting in animals from the other group, it's not going to work. I take an animal from last year and that becomes Ma'aseh for this year, it's not going to work. I didn't give Ma'aseh from this year's animals because that belongs to another category. In other words, every year, the Ramban says this, every single year, the Rosh Hashanah of every year, of everything defines that year. And whatever is born that year has a special category, it has a special geder. And you don't mix, there has to be boundaries. From this year, I give this year. From next year, I give from next year. I can't mix the two, and therefore it's a new Rosh Hashanah L'Maaseh Behem. That's Echad Be'el.
So what happens if Chav Tes Av you're left with 9? So they don't get counted at all.
Give my son.
You don't give Ma'aseh.
So they don't get
Yeah.
counted.
You're off the hook.
And if it's Ben Shmoshes, you go L'chumrah?
If the birth was Ben Hashmashas. Oh, that's a Jewish question.
I
Huh?
thought it was Pet the Rechem. I thought it was Pet the Rechem, not the birds. Pet the Rechem.
Only give my son 10.
No, we're not talking about a b'chayr here.
We're talking about Meiser.
Yeah, there's two
So-
separate
so
korbanos.
how do you define birth for purposes of Meiser? Is it the opening of the womb, or is it when it escapes, when it leaves the womb?
Leaves.
Okay, so when it leaves, it's Ben Shmoshes, then you have to go to L'chumrah because you don't know? It's a suffix, so it has what? How do you count it?
I don't know. I have to look it up.
I figured I'd ask. Someone else is asking about the...
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. Rebbe Lezer, Rebbe Shimon, and Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Shimon say be'echad b'tishrei. Ma'aseh Behema is not echad be'el and echad b'tishrei. Now you have to understand again what's the logic, why they would argue. But this is the machlokes. I saw once a word, I think, from Rabbinim of Pshischa. He said that be'echad be'el Rosh Chodesh Elul is Rosh Hashanah L'Maaseh Behema. Meaning even somebody who lived like a behema a whole year, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh Elul and they hear the shofar, so they start remembering that they have to give Ma'aseh, that they have to, part of them has to go to Hashem. And Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Shimon, they say, listen, sometimes Rosh Chodesh Elul doesn't work for a behema. But hopefully, Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Echad B'Tishrei, even the behema will recognize that he has to give. The Rambam paskins like Rebbe Lezer and Rebbe Shimon. So even if there's no, even be'echad be'elul, you're still not inspired. So there's still be'echad b'tishrei Ma'aseh Behema. Right. Be'echad b'tishrei, next one. Be'echad b'tishrei Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. The first day of Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah for years. What's Pshat Rosh Hashanah for years? This is, the Gemarah is going to explain also, Mefarish B'Rashi says Mefarish B'Gemarah, the new year begins. The new year begins, which the Gemarah is going to explain what that means practically, that the new year begins. L'shmitin or l'yovelis. Also for Shemitah and for Yovel. Meaning, we all know that when the Jewish people were present in Eretz Yisrael, so they would count the years till the 50th year. And then a new cycle would begin, so it was 50 years, 50 years. And every 7th year was Shemitah, when you couldn't plow or harvest or plant, harvest the fruits in Eretz Yisrael, and you had to keep your field or garden ownerless. What's called the new year of Shemitah? When does Shemitah begin? Does it begin Rosh Chodesh Elul, Rosh Chodesh Av? So it begins Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. From Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, the prohibitions of Shemitah begin. And the same is true with Yovel. Yovel had the same dinim like Shemitah. After counting 7 years, 7 times, you have 49 years. The 50th year was Yovel. When you have all the same halachas like Shemitah, plus 2 new halachas, and that is all the slaves had to go free, and all territory, all ancestral lands had to be returned to their owner on Yovel. So those mitzvahs of Yovel, also when do they begin? They begin on the day of Echad B'Tishrei. Rashi says, L'shmitim v'liyovelis, v'shenichnas Tishrei, aser lachrish v'lizroya min ha-Torah. You can't plow and you can't plant your field min ha-Torah. You have to leave the field barren, both on Shemitah and on Yovel. This begins the new day, the first day of Tishrei. It begins your Shemitah and Yovel year. Next, Ulanetiyah. Be'echad b'tishrei Rosh Hashanah also when it comes to planting. What's pshat when it comes to planting? Netiyah means, it's an expression for a sapling, which means a baby tree is called a netiyah. A tree during the first years is called a netiyah, and we know that the fruits of the first 3 years that grow, you're not allowed to eat, and you're not allowed to even benefit from them. They're called Arla, which means stuffed up, plugged. When does Arla begin? What's called the first year? So it's called the first day of Tishrei. This means, let's say I plant a tree in the month of Av, right? When does the first year end? You would think it ends a year later. No, it ends be'echad b'tishrei. Chavtes Elul is 1 year. From Rosh Hashanah begins a new year of Arla. If I plant the tree after Pesach, fine. So I have 6 months. But that's the chiddush. It starts with be'echad b'tishrei. Rashi says l'netiyah.
becomes mutter on Rosh Hashanah.
Right. Leminyan shnei Arla. For the numbers of the years of Arla, Rashi says, "Afilu not nita ba'av." Even if he planted in the month of Av, kol sashnasa rishona l'seif Elul. The first year finished at the end of Elul. Ubekulu mefarish time of Gemarah. The Mishnah needs to be understood. Why did we suddenly decide? For this it's echad b'tishrei. For this it's echad b'Elul. For this it's echad b'Nisan. Why does Bechlal Arla need a new year? Why can't you just make it from when you planted the tree? You planted the tree Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, so that's Arla. Next Rosh Chodesh Tammuz begins a new year. Third Rosh Chodesh Tammuz begins the third year. After 3 full years, you're done. After 3 full years, you're done. We don't say that. We say the second year started Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Why does that happen? The Gemara is going to explain everything. Weiter, the last one is Liyarakas. What is Liyarakas? Liyarakas means vegetables. What's the idea here? There were 3 things that needed Trumas and Maisus in Eretz Yisrael. If you had grain that grew, right? Grain includes 5 things. Wheat, barley, spelt, oats, and rye. What we call schita, shuir, kusmin, shiboilus, shul, and shifon. That needed Trumas and Maisus. That was number 1. The second thing are fruits. Grapes, oranges, peaches, etc. And the third, vegetables. Whatever the vegetables are. Cucumbers, tomatoes, etc. The halacha is that every single year you have to give from all these 3 things, taxes, so to speak, what we call the trumas, to the koyanim, to the leviim, to poor people, besides the 7th year. What's the process? The first thing is always truma g'dayla. Truma g'dayla has no shear. You could take 1 stalk of wheat from 100,000 and give it to the kohen, and you fulfill the mitzvah of truma g'dayla. There's no shear. The chachamim established that it should be approximately 2%. So if you have 100 stalks of wheat, so ayin bein in this, you give echad mechamishim, you give 1 of 50, in other words 2%. So if you have 100 stalks of wheat, you give 2 to the kohen. You're done. Truma g'dayla, you're done. Afterwards, you have whatever is left. You have now 98 stalks. So 10% you have to give to the Leviim. This is called Meiser Rishon. So now 10% of 98 you gave to the Leviim. So what is it? 9.8. What are you left with now? You're left with approximately 80. So now what happens is, you're not done yet. You have to give either Meiser Ani or Meiser Sheni. Depends on the year. Years 1, 2, 4, 5 is Meiser Sheni. Year 3, 6 is Meiser Ani. Meaning year 3, 6, the last 10% goes to poor people. Year 1, 2, 4, and 5, you have to take the next 10%, go to Yerushalayim, and eat it. You spend it in Yerushalayim. You get to spend time in Yerushalayim. You get to build the economy of Yerushalayim, to contribute to the economy of Yerushalayim. You spend time there, and you eat all your fruits or whatever you brought over there, or if it's too heavy, we redeem it on money. You bring the money to Yerushalayim, and then you're done. And then the rest belongs to you. Of course, the Levi has to take the 10% he got from you, and he has to give another 10% to the Kohen, which is called Trumas Meiser. Now, all these dinim of Trumas and Meisers, it depends on the year when the Tfuah grew. You have to know what's year 1, what's year 2, what's year 3, 4, 5, 6. Because year 1 and 2, you got to give Meiser Sheni. Year 1, 2, 4, 5 is Meiser Sheni. Year 3, 6 is Meiser Ani. Year 7, you don't give anything. It doesn't belong to you. Year 7, you're off. It's only for 6 years. So you have to know what's considered the first year, what's considered the second year. I have here vegetables. I have here tomatoes, right? I have here peaches, apples. Do I bring them to Yerushalayim? Do I give them to the poor person? So you say, oh, which year did it grow? What's called the year? What's called the first year? What's called the second year? That's why this becomes very negeya. So therefore, you have to know what's year 1, what's year 2. So that's why you have to have a Rosh Hashanah when it comes to all these things. There's another nekudah here, and that is, you had to separate Trumas and Meisrus from the produce of every year separately. Meaning, I can't give Truma from the fruits that grew last year over the fruits of this year. I can't take extra from my pile of last year to already give for this year also. It's not going to work. I take an extra 10% for my apples for this year too. No. Every group of fruits that grew this year have to have their own trumas and meisters. I can't take from this year from last year, and I can't take from last year for this year. So we have two separate halachas here. One halacha, you have to know which year it is to know what to do. Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani. Every year it changes. 1-2 versus 3-6. Another halacha is you have to know what's considered what grew this year, because from here I have to take trumas and meisters. I can't take extra from last year from this year. I'm not going to be yotzei. Like we learned before, shana. Every shana has its own meiser.
How do you define the beginning of a grove?
Atazoi. Very good. What's even called the beginning? So there's three different categories. Grain has one category, vegetables have one category, and fruits have a whole other category. Trees have a whole other category. The category by vegetables is the day you harvest it. From the day you harvest it, that's when you start giving meiser. That's when the chi of meiser is, from the day you harvest it. Yeah. By a tree, we're going to see soon it has to do with chanata. Chanata means when the bud, the flower falls off and the tiny, tiny fruit emerges. And by grain, it's when it grows a third. When it grows a third, that's when the chiyuv begins, as we will see. So b'meila, here we have to understand as follows. The first day of Tishrei, the Mishnah says, the beginning of the year when it comes to vegetables is called Tishrei. That means, Erev Rosh Hashanah, I harvested vegetables, and a day after Rosh Hashanah, I harvested vegetables. On Rosh Hashanah, you don't harvest vegetables, at least not midrabanan. If you still remember Masechta Beitza. Right? So on Rosh Hashanah, you don't harvest vegetables, but a day before Rosh Hashanah, you harvest, and a day after Rosh Hashanah, you harvest. So I cannot be mafresh trumas and maestras from the vegetables that I collected, that I harvested before 1 Tishrei, for the vegetables that I collected on base Tishrei. Even though it's a chiluk of 2-3 days, right? You have a pile here, vegetables, a pile here, vegetables. No. Here the vegetables were mechuyev and meiser, tavshanai and vav. Here it's tavshanai and zayin, and the cutoff time is when? Rosh Hashanah. Echad b'tishrei, that's Rosh Hashanah liyirakas. This is also, this is also the day that determines if you give Meiser Sheni or Meiser Ani. If I harvested it Chavtes Elul and it's year 1, it has to go to Yerushalayim. If I harvested it Beis Tishrei, right? And it's year 3, if I harvested it Erev Rosh Hashanah and it's year 2, it has to go to Yerushalayim. If it's Beis Tishrei of year 3, it has to go to the poor man. I can't say, oh, this will also go to Yerushalayim. No, it's already a different chiyuv. So what's cutoff day? Cutoff day is Echad B'Tishrei. Yeah?
Is grain included in your record?
No. Grain is going to have a separate one.
The mission doesn't mention it.
We'll see. The Gemarah in later in Daf Yud Beis, the Gemarah is going to say that grain has the same Rosh Hashanah, which is Echad B'Tishrei, the same Rosh Hashanah, in other words, the same cutoff time, but there's a big difference, and that is that by Yerakas, it's considered Peiros of the year when it was harvested. So if I harvested it Beis Tishrei Tavshanai and Zayin, which began Rosh Hashanah, I should say Gimel Tishrei Tavshanai and Zayin, then it's considered Tavshanai and Zayin Dika fruits, which in Shemitah may be the 3rd year, for example, and therefore I have to give it to a poor man. When it comes to Dagon, it's considered Peiros from the year when it reached a 3rd of its maturity. So it's a whole different thing. Nothing to do with harvest. So it's also Echad B'Tishrei. So you have to look. Echad B'Tishrei came, you go to your field and you have to see which grain reached a 3rd of its maturity. No issue if you harvested it or not. You're still going to leave it for a while to grow. Whatever reached a 3rd by Rosh Hashanah, it's already has now a din of Trumas and Maestris, whatever applies to this year. Whatever didn't reach a 3rd by Rosh Hashanah, right? So it's going to be from the new year because it's going to reach a 3rd after Rosh Hashanah. But that's also the cutoff time. So you can have one reach the 3rd Chavtes Elul, so now it belongs to Meiser Sheni. The other one reached a 3rd right after Rosh Hashanah, it already belongs to the new year. So it's the same concept like Yerakas, but it's a whole different, the way, and the same is true with Shana. You can't give Meiser from the old Dagon for the new Dagon, right? I now cut off the wheat and I have different piles. I want to give extra from the old wheat for that wheat. It's not going to work. This is Shana. This needs its Meiser. This needs its Meiser.
Grain grows at the end of the Nisan time, right? Grain doesn't grow at the Tishrei. Shas Aktira is Nisan.
No. So Zicher, okay. So for sure, before Rosh Hashanah there was no third, yeah. That's the point. That's the point. Before Rosh Hashanah you usually won't have a third. The third will be the season of growth.
So it's easier to distinguish.
Much easier. It's not like you have to go to Rosh Hashanah and start with a magnifying glass. It's usually not going to be nothing available, so for sure there's no chiyuv in middle of the year. But the point is, whatever the situation is, cutoff time is Rosh Hashanah. Because remember, it grows through the summer, so it does become a little... The new one doesn't grow, but the old one can continue to produce throughout the summer. Right? So Rosh Hashanah becomes the cutoff time. Okay. So we have Netiyas, Arla, Yerakas. The last piece is Be'echad B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon. The first of Shvat is Rosh Hashanah for the tree. What's Pshat Rosh Hashanah for the tree? Here you have a whole new Rosh Hashanah. Now first you have to understand why the tree is different than the vegetable and the grain. Why do the trees have a new Rosh Hashanah? Why don't we give them Echad B'Tishrei? That's number one. Number two, unlike vegetables and grain, the fruits of a tree apply to the year when there was the chanota of the tree, meaning when the flower, what we call a bud, falls off and the tiny fruit emerges, it still has to mature. That moment is considered the chi of trumas and maasros from that moment. Therefore, I cannot separate trumas and maasros from the fruits of a tree that had their chanota before Rosh Hashanah to the fruits of a tree that had their chanota after Rosh Hashanah. What's this Rosh Hashanah? On Echad B'Shvat, on the first day of Shvat. So therefore, if I look at a tree, and my tree, the flower fell off, say, Dalet Teves, or even Chavtes Teves, the next tree, the flower fell off when? According to this opinion, Beis Shvat, it's 2 separate years. It's completely 2 separate years. So first of all, I can't mix the two. I can't give trumas and maasros from this tree for this tree because it's shana. It's literally a whole new year. It's a whole new category. It's a whole new mitzias. It has to have its own din of trumas and maasros. Same thing. The fruit that had chanota chavtes teves, right? That's a previous year.
After Shemitah starts Rosh Hashanah. We're on Rosh Hashanah until Shvat. What's that? Is that the 6th year or that's the 1st year? What thing does it have? Because Shemitah, you had Shemitah in between, now you finish Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
The 1st year. Now from Cheshvan till Shvat, we have it in Mas only a Mas Hashanah.
Legabi de Elon, it's a different Rosh Hashanah. Your year started later.
So how do you say? So you start a half.
Yeah.
That half a year is still.
Legabi Elon, it belongs to the previous year.
So if you have Masai Masashane in this.
Yes, exactly. You understand what he's asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
What grew before in Teves belongs to the previous year. The second year. What grew after Rosh Chodesh Shvat or on Rosh Chodesh Shvat belongs to the new year. It has different halachas. It also has ramifications with one more issue, and that is what's known as Neta Revoi. Remember, we learned about Arla. After 3 years of Arla, the fruits of the 4th year you have to bring to Yerushalayim to eat. So the fruits that grow on the tree on the 4th year are called Revoi, and you have to bring them to Yerushalayim. When does the 4th year begin? What's the Shana Revis? When does it begin? So this is also a discussion. We'll see when you have to have Rosh Hashanah Leilanos. Now, an interesting thing is when it comes to Shemitah, we don't say that Rosh Hashanah Leilanos changes. When it comes to Shemitah, most Mefarshim say that when it comes to halachas of Shemitah, Rosh Hashanah is on the month of Tishrei, even when it comes to the fruits of a tree. You don't say there's a difference. What would be the why? The answer is because the Kehilas Yaakov explains this, because Trumas and Maasros has to do with the Kedushas HaPeiris. Shvius has to do with Kedushas HaOretz. It's a different halacha, right? Trumas and Maasros has to do with the holiness of the fruits that grow in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore you have to know when is it called the new fruit. This is my Rosh Hashanah, this is your new year, this is your old year. When it comes to Shvius, it has to do with the holiness of the earth. The soil of the earth, you're not allowed to plow the earth, which produces all of these things. So whenever you say Rosh Hashanah L'Shmitin is whatever reason you decided it's Echad B'Tishrei, which you have to understand why Echad B'Tishrei when stam, it's not random dates. Let's hack another one. You make Echad B'Kislev, so you can make Echad B'Teves. There was some mahalach here which the Gemara is going to analyze each one, but therefore Shemitah, according to most, applies also to Pei Seila.
What do you do with the fruit between Shemitah and the first Shvat, Rosh Chodesh Shvat?
The ripe fruits, whoever wants can eat them. It says, behemoths can eat them, Jews, non-Jews, whoever
No,
wants.
between Shemitah. You harvesting your fruit.
There's no Meiser on Shemitah. Shemitah's Hefker.
I understand, but now Shemitah finished on Tishrei.
No.
Okay, now Rosh Chodesh Shvat is the first year for the new count.
Yeah.
What do you do with these fruits between the Rosh Chodesh Tishrei and Rosh Chodesh Shvat?
If it was Shemitah?
No, it was Shemitah last year. Now it's no more
It's
Shemitah.
the
7th year of
It's
the
talking
tree.
about the 8th year.
So you're good. Shemitah ended. That's what we're saying. Shemitah
count-
ends.
you
Yeah,
count it
you're
as the
good.
You count it as the first year? For Meiser Buntu Bet Amidah.
Oh, yeah. For that, yeah.
For that you count it.
Yeah. For that. Because that's already a chiyuv on these payers, yeah.
Then you count it.
Yeah,
as-
that's what he asked
as
before,
Meiser.
yeah. Kedivrei Beis Shammai, like the words of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel loimrim, Beis Hillel holds, B'chamisha Asar Boy, it is on the 15th day of Shvat. This is the only Rosh Hashanah that it's not on the first day of a month. It's Chamisha Asar Boy. Rashi says, Li'irakus l'maise yerek she'ein termin u'ma'asim in anilkut lifnei Rosh Hashanah al shel acher Rosh Hashanah li'ilon li'inyin meiser she'ein ma'asrin peiris ha'ilon shechontu koidem shvat al shechontu la'achar shvat she'be'ilon hoylech achar chanota. By an ilon you look not when you harvest the fruit, not when the fruit starts growing, third, like by grain, but how you look for chanota. Gemarah mefarish maish no shvat. Where did you come up with shvat suddenly? How did you jump from Elul, from Tishrei, all the way to shvat? Why shvat? The Gemarah is going to explain this. So we have a machlokes on one which is Rosh Hashanah la Ilon. There's an interesting diuk. Kidivrei Beis Shammai. What's up with Kidivrei Beis Shammai? Usually, Beis Shammai Yoimrim, Beis Hillel Yoimrim, Be'echad B'Shvat Rosh Hashanah Le'ilon, Divrei Beis Shammai. What's Kid Divrei Beis Shammai? Samad Nalashim. It's brought in Sfarim that one of the Vilna Gaon had a Talmud. They called him Reb Zemela. And he once asked him the shaila. So they say, "B'toich kedei dibur," before he finished asking, the Vilna Gaon responded and said that the Gemara is going to say later that l'cha'ira, when you think about it, you have here be'echad b'nissen is one Rosh Hashanah, right? And then you have echad be'elul is another one, and then be'echad b'tishrei is a third, and then be'echad b'shvat is a fourth. The Gemara is going to ask in a few blot l'cha'ira l'regalim is not be'echad b'nissen. L'regalim is tesvav tishrei. The Rosh Hashanah for Yom Tovim is not echad b'nissen. The first Yom Tov is Pesach. Pesach is tesvav nissen. So really you have chamish Rosh Hashanah him. You don't have Arba Rosh Hashanah. You have 5 Rosh Hashanah, right? Rosh Chodesh Shvat is not a question because Beis Hillel doesn't hold it to Rosh Hashanah. But the Regalim is not L'malachim, so it's 5 Rosh Hashanahs. You shouldn't say Arba, you should say chamish Rosh Hashanah him. And for the Gemarah, Arba Rosh Hashanah that are on Rosh Chodesh. Arba Rosh Hashanah are on Rosh Chodesh. Yeah, that's what pshat. So the Gaon says that's how you have to read the Mishnah. So l'chayr it's a psadoichik in the Mishnah. It says Arba Rosh Hashanah means that's what the Mishnah says. No, Arba Rosh Hashanah that are Rosh Chodesh. When be'echad b'nissen, yeah, Pesach doesn't apply. It's not Rosh Chodesh. Be'echad be'elul, be'echad b'tishrei, yeah, be'echad b'shvat. Kidivrei Beis Shammai. Light Beis Shammai. It's Arba Rosh Hashanah that are Rosh Chodesh. You understand? Kidivrei Shammai is going on the Arba Rosh Hashanah. Arba Rosh Hashanah Kidivrei Beis Shammai. Like Beis Hillel Taka, it's not. There's no Arba Rosh Hashanah that are Rosh Chodesh. It's not true. Because the 4th Rosh Hashanah is not Rosh Chodesh. It's Taka Chamish also. That's what he was the medallion.
For Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon also, there is only 3.
Huh?
For Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, there is only 3.
Right.
Chad doesn't exist.
Ein Chanam. Zog the Gemarah. So now the Gemarah starts analyzing every halach in detail, going through every Rosh Hashanah. So the first one is L'malachim. Echad b'nissen is Rosh Hashanah L'malachim. Frag the Gemarah, L'mai hilchasa. For what halacha? In other words, why do we need this? So Rashi already bavarined it. Rashi says, Kiloimar, Lama hukva yoyma yuchad l'minyan hamalachim. What do we need a Rosh Hashanah for? Eima. Shall call Melech u'Melech Taschel Shnosim Miyem Shamad Bay. I mean, look at the history. What do you have to make a Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah for kings? There's no Rosh Hashanah for kings. Whenever he became a king, that's his Rosh Hashanah. That's when he celebrates his new position. Why are you making me a Rosh Hashanah? And for the Gemarah, Amar Reb Chizda l'shtaris. Reb Chizda said they had to do it, and the reason they had to do it is l'shtaris, for documents, to be able to establish the nature of a document. What's the problem? The Tanan we learned on Mishnah Masechta Shvi is Shtarei Chayv HaMukdamin Psulim. Shtarei Chayv, documents of debt that are predated, it disqualifies the document. V'hamilcharin, if they're post-dated, Ksherin. The document is still valid. What does this mean? For this we have to remember, if I lend you money, and there's a written document, what we call a shtar. So what happens is, halachically, I have a lien on your assets. So if now I lent you $1 million, you have a house, you sell the house, after I lent you the money, you were not allowed to sell this house, stam, as a hefker, as completely your house, because I have a lien on the house, like when a bank has a lien on your house, and therefore if you don't have money to pay me back, I could go and take the house from the buyer. It's not his fault, but I could take the house from him, and then he comes back to you, to the borrower, and wants back his $1 million that he gave, or another house. Right? That's the halach. It's only if there's a document. If it's a milva al peh, if it was an oral arrangement, then there's no lien. But if there's a document, halachically, there's a lien on your property. When does that lien begin? From the day that I lent you the money. What if you sold the house a year before I lent you the money? I have no lien on that property. It's not the buyer's fault. He's allowed to buy your house. It was a year before. If he bought the house after I lent you the money, he should have investigated, because there was already a lien on the property. The moment I give you the $1 million, I want, so to speak, not mamash amashkin, but I want some security. So the security is that all your assets, I have a lien on. But what you sold before, of course, I can't have a lien on it. It's not fair. I didn't lend you the money. Why should that be under any arrangement between us when that happened a year or a month later? That's why it's so important to understand when you see a document, if it was predated or post-dated. If it was predated, meaning, I lent you the money, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. That's when I lent you the money. But the document was written Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so that means if you sold property between Rosh Chodesh Nisan and Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, I, the lender, could come and grab that property from the people who bought it, from the clients, and it's really unjust, it's unfair. That's why Shtaras HaMukdamin, if it's predated, it's psulin, because it's criminal, it's illegal, it's immoral. Because the document.
Was written, or you wrote in the document on Thomas that it was missing?
Whatever it is.
It's to protect
It's to protect the
the
lukuchas. Either case. Either case. But the loan actually happened a month later, 6 months later, a year later, and it was just predated, it makes it possible.
So no lien should have attached.
So no lien should be attached to it. It's not fair. Because I'm going to come and take a house that you sold Rosh Chodesh Iyar, when really I have no rights to that house at all. Because you sold it before you ever borrowed money from me. What if it's post-dated? What if I lent you the money on Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, and the document is written for Rosh Chodesh Elul, right? Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. Gesundheit, I relinquished my right to collect the property that you sold during those few months. Okay, doesn't disqualify the shtar. There's no injustice that was being done here. What's the worst thing that happened? The lender relinquished his right to collect the assets that were sold the first few months after the loan. Sure, it's his choice.
That just tells you why you need to have a date on the start. It doesn't tell you why you need to start the date from Tishrei. In other words, from Malacca. Why can't you just say?
So, no, this is what the Mishnah says. Based on this, the Gemarah says the Chachamim felt they have to establish a Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. Why? So Rashi will explain, because many people were unaware of they weren't celebrating the dates that these kings became kings. It wasn't so significant for them. It may have been very insignificant for them. It wasn't a big. This wasn't a big simcha by them. So, and since this is how they were writing the shtaris, so there could be a big confusion here. Because of this confusion, they made a generic date. As let's see Rashi, and we'll understand why there's a Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. Rashi explains it at length. You see the Rashi. We have to figure out which document is predated and postdated. The Tanam b'Masechta Shvi is Shtarei Chayv HaMukdamim Psulim. L'fi sheratza litrif lekuchas. He wanted to devour. Litrif means devour, take away, chop away. from the clients, shalakhu sadim min aloiva mizman shebishtar. Those who bought a field from the borrower from the date in the shtar. V'shaloi kidinu, it's not fear. Sharei kodma mechir lahalva. Because he sold it before he borrowed the money. It's not fear to take away those properties. There's a document. The document was predated. Ubishtar meyit shalva kodma. The shtar is saying that the loan was before the mechira. Lefichach konsu meligbois boy. So they don't let him use this shtar to collect assets. V'lo yitref afilu mizman hamilva. That's the chiddush. Even when he wants to take property after the time of the loan, which l'chayr on this he has a lien, the document becomes garbage. The document is dismissed. It's treated like ve'ene ala kemilva al peh she'ena goyim min hamashabadim. It's like a loan that happens orally, verbally. There's no document. We make an arrangement. I give you money. We have edus, whatever it is. What's the din? There's no lien on the property.
Both people to sign?
Huh?
Don't you need both people to sign?
He's masculine. The guy needs the money desperately.
He agreed.
Ask him to do
He
it.
agreed. That wasn't a criminal activity. There's no forgery. He agreed.
Isn't it possible because the AS is
That needs the
possible?
money. That's even giving you the money if you backdate it
Isn't that
6
why it's a
months.
worthless start?
The loiva desperately needs the money.
Use the money
But
already,
they
and
gave
now they wanna do
AS
documents
that
6 months
it was
later.
given this month.
Yes.
And it was actually-
Yes. Yes.
Wasn't that supposed to be this?
And then even
No. No, we'll see in a moment. It wasn't
But
false.
even the lawyer
Practical
agrees,
things, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
even the lawyer agrees.
Yeah.
it's no
That's it.
start.
Desperately needs the money.
It's no start.
It's not fear.
So they knock it down to a millball pet.
They make it down to the. He owes him the money, of course. He owes him the money.
Completely unsecured then.
Right. There's no security in terms of the lien. Yeah. V'im. So here's the issue. V'im loy kavu yom l'tchila shnois hamelech. Now you have to outcome. Let's say they didn't make a day when the king starts his new year. There's no such a day. One king became the melech test Tu B'Av, another king Tu B'Shvat, another king Zois Chanukah, whatever the day is. Elakol melech u'melech l'fi yom sha'amad. Ein la'avchin im ashtar muktam e'mocher. Rashi doesn't mean never. I mean, it's not always easy to distinguish if it's predated or postdated. Why? Could go. Here's an example. He gives now a detailed example. In Kosov Boy, you have a document, Bezdin sees a document that says like this. Bekislev, in the month of Kislev, B'shana Shlishis, the 3rd year, Lava Ploini Miploini. Yeah. Yankel borrowed money, borrowed $1 million from Shmuel. When? Mana, I said for $1 million. Mana, a little less than $1 million. $100. Okay, nicht gefährlich. $100 million. Okay, very good. I like it. I like the hasagas. Very good. You're hanging around the right people. The Kislev b'shana shlishis lava ploini meploini mana. Good. He borrowed ploini b'shana shlishis of the rain, say of Achav. Okay. Va'edim amru, come the Edis. Bedin says, what do you know about it? We never saw the loan. We signed the document, but we never saw it. Haloiva amar lana, the borrower came and said, do me a favor, chismo alai shani chayav leploini mana. Just sign that I owe this guy a money. They just heard it from him. So they don't have a problem if the loiva wants. Fine. We have a mission about the loiva asks you to do it, you can do it. You're doing a guy a favor, what do you care? We don't know when he actually lent him the money. Did he lend it before Kislev? Or did he lend it after Kislev? We know that the date is Kislev. Yeah? But we don't know when the actual loan is. But one thing we know, we do know that the same Yankel, he gave him that loan, he gave him a money that year, in the month of Tammuz, the 3rd year of that Melech. Okay. So now it says on the document that it happened Kislev the 3rd year. They saw an actual loan Tammuz of the 3rd year. No, what's the problem? If the judges are not familiar with the history of the king, exactly which month he became the king, there's no way to know him Tammuz kaidem lekislev, him Kislev kaidem leTammuz. If Tammuz precedes Kislev, if Kislev precedes Tammuz. Rashi explains. Im shnosoi mascheles bein Tammuz lekislev. Let's say the king became a melech Rosh Chodesh of. His year began between. We're going now without a Rosh Hashanah. We're going now according to the real story, without a Rosh Hashanah. So let's say the year began between Tammuz and Kislev. Nimtze, Kislev koidem leTammuz b'chol shnoisav. He became a king Rosh Chodesh of. So Rosh Chodesh Kislev that year was his first year, right? Rosh Chodesh Tammuz will be the end of the first year. Rosh Chodesh Av will be the second year. So Kislev, throughout his whole history of this king till he dies, or till he's dethroned, till he's impeached, Kislev is always before Tammuz. So therefore, when they wrote a star, that Rosh Chodesh Kislev, there is a loan. Really, the loan was Tammuz. It says Rosh Chodesh Kislev Shana Shlishis of the Melech. The Melech became a Melech when Rosh Chodesh Av, Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, whatever it is. So it's Kislev predated or postdated? It's predated, right? The loan started Tammuz. The star is Kislev. You could take away the property from people who bought property from the borrower between Kislev and Tammuz, which is immoral. But if he became a king between Kislev and Tammuz, he became a king, say, Dalet Teves, now, Nimtza, Tammuz kaidem lekislev b'chol shnoisav. So Tammuz precedes Kislev, right? Because Rosh Chodesh Tammuz is the third year, and then later Kislev is the end of the year, because he became a king in Teves. B'meila, you wrote that the loan is when? Kislev. The loan was actually Tammuz. What came first? Tammuz came before Kislev. So if you say Kislev is the third year, right? The third year ends Teves. That means Tammuz was much earlier. That means the loan happened before the document. Shtar Me'ucheru, it's post-dated. Actually, the Malva is a tzaddik. He's giving this guy leeway. The Malva is a good guy. And therefore the confusion that this was the way you established years. So unless you had a pekiyas in this, there could be a confusion. So therefore the Chachamim didn't want this confusion, because it's very negei lahalach. Va'achshav shekavu Nisan Rosh Hashanah la'olam Tammuz kaidem lekislev. Once Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, if Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, that's the new year. So then Tammuz is always precedes Kislev. No such a thing. Kislev comes before Tammuz. Can't happen. Tammuz is closer to Nisan than Kislev. But maybe if it says Shana Shlishis for Tammuz and Shana Shlishis for Kislev, what was first? If Rosh Hashanah is Teves, then Kislev was first. If Rosh Hashanah was Av, then Tammuz was first. If Rosh Hashanah was Nisan, it's never a Shaila. Tammuz was always first. But Mela, so is it a good star or not a good star? If Tammuz was first, it's a post-dated. It's post-dated. The loan happened before the document. And then the guy is a good guy. He could collect whatever he wants. He just relinquished the rights over those years. That's why they made a Rosh Hashanah La Malacca. Tomorrow we'll see. Teves has a huge critique on Rashi. He says judges can't figure out the history. Let them figure out the history.
Even if they could figure, and if they can't figure it out, it doesn't help because we became a king with Shvat.
No.
So the other, you don't know what.
No problem. If he became a king in Shvat, Shvat Adar is 1 year, Nisan is a new year.
Yeah, but the king, the Bezin doesn't know about that part, so Bezin can get confused with that also.
That I don't care. That I don't care. What I care about Tammuz and Kislev. I don't care if it's 2 separate years. Hate. You understand? The problem is 1 year, different months. You understand? Let's say they don't know that.
I know, this is the reason.
The worst that will happen is, let's say the document was written in Shvat, so it says the first year. The loan will say the second year. Not a problem. Or the other way around. That's not a problem. The problem is in the years, 1 year, Shana Shlishis. That you took care of. Another solution. No. Okay, so the Gemarah said that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. It's the first Rosh Hashanah of the year. What's the meaning of Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim? So the Gemarah explained what the meaning is, that on documents, we today write on documents the years since the creation of the universe. Hey, Tavshanai and Zion, for example. But the time of the Mishnah, everything changed basically. We don't have any more documents with the date of when the king became a king. But in this time of the Mishnah, they would write shtaras. This was the year. There was no other year. The year, how did you know which year? It was basically which year it was since the king, who was alive at the time, was appointed and sat on the throne. So it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 50 years. Usually probably not more. Menashe was a king for 55 years, but that was unique. And that's how you made the cheshbon. What was the reason for this? Why is it negeya? So Rashi already said because of Shalom Malchus, good relations with the king. Why is it so negeya to make a Rosh Hashanah? Right, that's the question. Don't make a Rosh Hashanah. The king becomes a king Rosh Chodesh Nisan, great. And if he becomes a king Chav Gimel Tammuz, it's like good. So that's when the year starts. On this, Reb Chizda explained that it was very necessary in order to be able to have a clear date when the year begins and when the year ends. With every king, you always knew Rosh Chodesh Nisan is always cutoff time. It's a new year. No matter if he became a king a day before, a month before, or a year before. Rosh Chodesh Nisan was always a new year, and as Rashi explained at length, what that would help avoid is any misunderstanding if a document is predated or post-dated. In the example that Rashi gave, if Eidos come and say that a borrower asked them to make a document, sign a document that he borrowed money, Shimon borrowed money from Reuven. They didn't see the loan, but the loiva asked them to write a document that he borrowed money. The date that they gave for it was what the date? Rashi says the date was Kislev. The loan actually happened on Tammuz. It doesn't say a year. For it would say Tovshanai and Zion. So Kislev comes before Tammuz. It's not a problem. Kislev comes before Tammuz. So then it's very obvious that the document was predated because Kislev comes before Tammuz. There's a document that I had lent you money on Kislev and I lent you money on Tammuz. Obviously it's predated and it disqualifies the document. As we explained, because it's not a fair document, because I can take properties that you sold between Kislev and Tammuz. But when you're dealing with a king's years, how do you know what's first, Kislev or Tammuz? You're not dealing with our calendar with months. We know Kislev comes before Tammuz. January comes before July. But you wouldn't know this. You could say it depends when he became a king. What's the kshayla? If he became a king, Lamashal and Teves, so then what came first? Tammuz came before Kislev, not Kislev before Tammuz. In other words, the loan came before the document. So the document is post-dated, not predated. Gewaldig, no problem. That's if he became a king when? In Teves. What if he became a king, Lamashal, in Av, Chodesh Av, or Elul, or Tishrei, or Cheshvan? So then what happened? Kislev comes before Tammuz, right? Because Kislev is the first month when he was a king. So that means that the document predated the loan. The document was Kislev, it predated, which means it would disqualify it. It would disqualify the document. You can't even take any properties. It's like a milval peh, as Rashi said. In order to avoid all these confusions, they made Rosh Hashanah leMelachim. So it's good. There's no question anymore. Why? Because Nisan is a new year. If Nisan is a new year, Tammuz always comes before Kislev. You can't have Kislev before Tammuz. So if they say, Tammuz of this year, of this king, was the loan. Kislev of this year, the third year of the king, was the document of the loan. Tammuz came before Kislev. I don't care when he became a king. It's not Negeya. Let's say he became a king in Shvat. It's not Negeya because Nisan is always cut off time. That's how the Gemarah, the Rashi explains Reb Chizda's point why you had to have a Rosh Hashanah l'Malach. I just want to say one point, and that is Teves is very perturbed by the idea of Rashi that everyone forgot which day the king became a king. Everybody forgot. Okay, it may not be such an important date. Let's face it. Depends, I guess, what type of king it is. In other words, maybe people don't choose to celebrate the date, and they forget the date. But that everyone here, you're dealing with dayanim, you're dealing with judges. You're not dealing stam with amcha. You're dealing with a bezdin. Not only that, you're dealing also with a sofer. The sofer, the scribe of the documents, there was somebody. He writes a lot of documents during the year, so he knows when he started to write the third year. He knows when the king became a king, because he's writing from that day that he became a king. Yeah, anniversary. He changed the year. So the Sefer for sure l'cha'ira remembers when. So he finds it difficult that Rashi says that everybody forgot, and therefore you need Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. If you'll take a look, I want to read with you one shtickle here. He goes into a whole other shakla v'tarya, but if you go to the Tosfos l'shtaris, you see it's the big Tosfos. The second line from the wide lines. You see the second line from the wide lines in Tosfos. At the end of the line he says, Miu Iker Pirushay Tema Gdoila. After a whole other discussion, he says, Umiyu Iker Pirusha, you see Tema Gdoila. the very pirush of Rashi is extremely strange. Why is it so strange? He says, "Sha'asu takana pen yishkuchu kol ha'oila Monsey amad hamelech." That they really felt that you have to make a takana. Why? Because everybody forgot when the king became a king. Everybody. V'chein sofer shekoisef kol hayom shtaris. The sofer described who this is what he does. He does this all day. He'ech yishkach. He doesn't know when he changed from year 2 to year 3. He doesn't know if the king became a king this date or that date, and when he had to write his star. V'oid. And furthermore, third thing, the im kain, if we're really afraid, have a motzi lemeimar, he should have said, the nafka min etuva l'chol shtaris. That the reason they made us man, a Rosh Hashanah l'malachim, is for all the shtaris, not only because of the situation that Rashi said, but rather, shelo yedu ma lichtev boi b'yoyim, the ein yoydin Monsey mascheles shnas hamelech. You can ask a better question. They won't know how to date any star. If you don't know when the king became a king, so now we're writing a star on the Teves. Is it the 3rd year of the king? Is it the 4th year of the king? Is it the 2nd year of the king? If you don't know the date, so then you don't know the anniversary of the date. If you don't know the anniversary of the date, that's what Rashi should say. Rashi should say, we Pasha don't know how to write documents. They had to make it in a simpler way. So therefore they made, once Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you know it's a new year. In other words, people knew how many years the king was a king. That Rashi doesn't think people forgot. They know how many years he's a king, but which day they don't know. So Teves says, then your problem is not predated, post-dated. Any document, people don't know what to do. What should we write? Shana Shlishis, Shana Shniya. Did he become a king yesterday? Did he become a king a month ago? They don't know the date. V'oi, the Chai Gavna in this case... Now he goes into a whole shayla. Okay, we'll read. V'oi, the Chai Gavna in this case, let's say that the star was written before the halva, the star was written before the law, in other words, it's predated. Lav muktam la abaya. According to Abaya, it's b'chal not a problem of muktam. The Amma B'Pedek Kamad Bab Metzia, he says in the first Pedek of Bab Metzia, that you could write a star for a loiva, even if the malva is not there, like Rashi said, even if the malva is not there, if a loiva asks us to write a document that he borrowed money, you can do it. And he says, the Eidav B'chasum of Zachin Loi. Abaya said, how can you write a star for the loiva if the malva is not there? L'chayr, it may be a star mukdam, it may be a predated star. So he says, the Eidav B'chasum of Zachin Loi, meaning that the Chamam were taken, that even if the loan didn't happen, the Eidus, through signing it, create a lien on the properties of the loiva from the moment they signed it. So therefore it's not called a predated document. But the Eidus, through signing the document, even though the loan didn't happen, Zachin Loi, that itself creates a lien. Just like when you make a loan, it creates a lien. The signature of the Eidus on the predated document allow the malva to have a lien on all the assets of the borrower from this day when the document was written. This is what the loiva does. You want the witnesses? The day it was signed. If so, we don't have a problem according to Abaya. The whole Gemarah doesn't make sense. The Poligale, and according to the Basi who argues with Abaya, you don't need this takana. Hamrino, we say, you don't write a star for the loiva only if the malva is there, because we're afraid that it's going to be predated. Only when the moicher actually makes a kinyan and he's makna something to the koina, then you could write it even though the koina is not there. So according to the Basi, you don't have an issue because you won't have a metzias that the Eidus are going to sign on a halva. They're going to testify that there was a loan in Tammuz and the star is going to say Kislev, because you don't write a star for the loiva unless the malva is there. So Tosfos just says a different word. Venira, we're not afraid that people are going to forget when the melech became a melech. He says, Nafka min el-ishtari chayv hamugdamin. The issue is we're afraid of predated documents, meaning, Hainu, kegoyin im amad hamelech be'echad b'nisan. If a melech becomes a king on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, uksheyagia echad b'nisan acher. Now, the next Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes. What do you have to write? 2nd year. What's going to happen? The 2nd Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is the 1st anniversary, the 2nd year begins. I come and I borrow from you $100,000, right? Fine. Yishkach ha-sofer, the sofer, the scribe is going to forget. The yizbert, he's going to think there's shtakat amad hamelech b'shnayim b'nisan. He's going to believe that the Melech became a Melech on Beis Nisan, not on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The Ovid Inish the Toy Chad Yoima. It's not a Yom Tov Min HaTorah, it's not Chanukah, it's not Purim, it's not Rosh Hashanah. A person could make a mistake on one day. Rosh Chodesh Nisan to Beis Nisan, you could make a mistake. If that's the case, so what's going to happen? V'yichtav be'echad b'nisan b'shana Rishayna l'melech. So the first anniversary of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, he had to write the second year. He thinks only tomorrow is the second year. Remember, this is if there's no Rosh Hashanah l'melech. So what is he going to write in Rosh Chodesh Nisan the second year? He's going to say it's Rosh Chodesh Nisan the first year. V'nimtza shtar zamuktim shana shleima. So this is a shtar that's predated a whole year. Because when Bezdin sees a shtar, I borrowed money, I lent you money, Rosh Chodesh Nisan the first year of the king. Really, it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan the second year of the king. So now the lender is going to come and collect property that you sold already a full year before the loan. The loan was Rosh Chodesh Nisan the second year. The Sofer thought he became a king on Beis Nisan, so he wrote Rosh Chodesh Nisan the first year. So it comes out legally it's predated a full year. Because one day people can make a mistake. To forget Bechlal in what area, when he became a king, that Tosfos feels as a doichik. The Sofer forgot, Bezdin forgot, everybody forgot. Like Rashi says. You don't know if Kislev is before Tammuz, if Tammuz is before Kislev. But one day, you can have a problem. V'nimtzu Bezdin terfim in alakuchas shel shana zu shaloi kedin. Bezdin will grab away assets from all the people who may have bought properties of the borrower throughout an entire year, from one Rosh Chodesh Nisan to the next Rosh Chodesh Shaloi Kedin, illegally. Why? Because this is before the loan. It's what the borrower sold before he ever borrowed money. Aval achshav shekavu Nisan Rosh Hashanah. Once they made Rosh Chodesh Nisan Rosh Hashanah, Sulei Yasi L'dei Takala. There won't be a problem. Dafilu Amad Ishtakad B'Shnayim B'Nisan. Let's say Taka he became a king on Beis Nisan. Zol Zayin Azay. Now Rosh Chodesh Nisan comes. When the new Nisan comes, it's a new year. So even if Itaka was right, that is Beis Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the next time, you can't write the first year because it's Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim. It's going to be the second year. So Bezdin will never think that you could take properties that he sold from last Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That won't happen. But Mela, the Sefer will always write that it's the second year. That's how Tosfos learns Pshat in Gemarah. He says, V'im Toimar, Akati Asil de Takala. You may still have a problem. Why? The Im Amad b'Chavtes ba'Adar b'Shana Rishayna l'Melech. Let's say Amad, the king became a king on the 29th of Adar. Okay, this is the Shana Rishayna of the king b'Chavtes Adar. No, Kshiyagia Chavtes Acher. The next Chavtes Adar, I lend you money. 1 year later, Yita HaSofer b'Yoyim Echad. Again, the Sofer will make a toast. V'Yizber she'Amad be'Echad b'Nis. He believes that the Melech became a king 1 day off, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. What's the difference? If the king became a king on Chavtes Adar, which is the truth, the next Chavtes Adar is what? Is already Shana Shniya. Why? Because Rosh Chodesh Nisan was cut off day. He was only a king for 1 day, and that's a year. Is good. But I think, so what am I going to write the next Chavtes Adar? Shana Shniya is good. But I think that he became a king when? Rosh Chodesh Nisan, on 1 day off. So Chavtes Adar I'm going to write the first year. So they're going to go take fields from last Chavtes Adar, because that was the first year. So you still have your same problem. Just take it a day off instead of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Beis Nisan. You have a problem with Chavtes Adar to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So why do you think that a Sofer could make a mistake from 1 to 2 and not from 29 to 1? Could also make a mistake. So now he's going to say b'Chavtes ba'Adar, and he's going to say Chavtes Adar Shana Rishayna l'Melech. Chavtes Adar, that's what you have to say. Chavtes Adar is going to be the first year because he became a king Rosh Chodesh Nisan. V'nimtza muktam Shana Shleima. So the shtar is predated a full year. The emes is that he became a king Chavtes Adar. So Aleph Nisan was already a year. Now it's a second year. But when he writes Chavtes Adar the first year, Bezdin is going to look and they're going to go a full year back and take all the fields away. Lav Pirchi. This is not a problem. Why? If he became a king on the 29th of Adar, miyad sheyagia le'echad b'nisan maschalim nishana shniya. 1 day later, the Sofer had to write a second year. A whole year he's been writing year two. So you really think that suddenly Chavtes Adar is going to say, oh no, it's year 1. A whole year he's been writing year 2. If not, the shtaris are illegal. They're not good shtaris. Because the moment Rosh Chodesh Nisan came, in the first case of Tosfos, there's no issue with it. It happened Rosh Chodesh Nisan. He's been writing Shana Rishayna, Beis Nissen, Shana Rishayna. A year later, he doesn't remember if it's Rosh Chodesh Nissen or Beis Nissen. But here, it affected the whole year. So Punkt Chav Tes Adar, 12 months later, he's going to decide, you know what? It's the wrong year. It's Shana Rishayna. Of course not. It's Shana Shniya. Hilchach loy toy. Kol Hashana kasav chol Hashana. Hilchach loy toy. Therefore, he will not make a mistake. And therefore, Tosfos says that's not an issue. But the issue is what we said before. He made a mistake one day of Rosh Chodesh to Beis. And as a result of that, we make a Rosh Hashanah l'malach. That's how Tosfos learns the Vart. In conclusion, they made a cutoff time every Rosh Chodesh Nissen. A melech is considered celebrating a new anniversary of his reign, of his monarchy, even if he just became a king one day or 1 week earlier. We still have the big question, why Rosh Chodesh Nissen was chosen. Vas epis Rosh Chodesh Nissen, you could have chosen any month. There's no difference. What's the difference? Why the month of Nissen? That the Gemarah will discuss soon. Before the Gemarah discusses the reason, the Gemarah now brings a few brises that elaborate on the halacha of the Mishnah, which is usually the function of every brisa. The brises were there to elaborate, to explain new details, new nuances, new pratim that the Mishnah doesn't say, because the Mishnah is written brief and concise. And the brisa, which was written in the same generation, the generation after the Mishnah, by the Tanoim who helped Rabbi Yehuda Anasi edit the Mishnah, always elaborate on the Mishnah. The word brisa, it's just good to know, is a combination of two words, bar yesa, which in Aramaic means bringing in from outside. Yesa means to bring in, like asi, to come in, and bar means outside, bar yesa. Because the brises were left out of the Mishnah. The Mishnah was edited meticulously by Rabbi Yehuda Anasi and his Talmidim, and then that which was left outside, there were a lot of, they had manuscripts that Rabbi was looking at, everybody wrote things, and these were left out, and then bar yesa, they brought it in, and they made a special compilation of all of these brises, which usually are more details and elaborations of the details discussed in the Mishnah, more in brief. So that's why you'll see basically the common denominator of not all but most brises. Bar Yesa. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Melech sha'amad be'esrim v'tisha ba'adar. A king who became a king on the 29th day of Adar. Kivin she'gi echad b'nissen, Rosh Chodesh Nissen comes, also loy shana. A full year is complete. And now we start counting the second year. So it's really a funny situation. He was a king one day. The next day I write a document and I write Rosh Chodesh Nissen Shana Shniya LeMelech Achashverosh, whoever the Melech is. Actually, these are Jewish kings. V'im loy amad ela be'echad b'Nissen. If he became a king only on the first day of Nissen, ein moinin loy shana sheyagia Nissen acher. You only count a year after the next Nissen arrives. In other words, he's taka a full year, a melech, and the next Rosh Chodesh Nissen, that's when you write Shana Shniya, and of course he really deserves it because he was a full year he was a king. So the Brisa clearly identifies what Rosh Hashanah l'malachim means. So the Gemarah, Amar Mar, the master just said, meaning the Brisa just said, Melech Shamad B'Esrim V'Tisha B'Adar, Kivin She'Higia Be'echad B'Nissen, also Lo Shana. So Rashi says, the last Rashi, also Lo Shana, Keloimar, Kol Soloy Shnasai. The year is complete, Ume'ata Moinin Lo Shana Shniya. Not like in the first case, where the year is complete after one day, which is of course not complete, incomplete. Here, it's Taka Kol Soloy Shnasai. In other words, the first year is complete, and only then do you write Shana Shniya. Frag the Gemarah, Zog the Gemarah, not Hakamashmal, and the Bryce is teaching us the Nissen Rosh Hashanah l'malachim. Number one, that Nissen is Rosh Hashanah l'malachim, which is essentially what the Mishnah said. That Nissen is the first Rosh Hashanah, is the first day of the year for kings. In other words, whenever Nissen comes, it's considered this is a new year for the king. So Rosh Chodesh Nissen means it's a new year. You were a king for one day, doesn't bother me, but this is called a new year. Number one. Number two, it teaches me one more thing. V'yoim echad b'shana chashav shana. It teaches me that one day in a year, halachically, could be considered an entire year. How can you say it's shana shniya? The man was a king for one day. How do you say he was a king? He's now a king second year. He was a king for one day. Is the pshat yoim echad b'shana chashav shana, and therefore the next day is already considered a new year. Sifsei Chachamim writes that one of the reasons Chazal wanted to emphasize this was they wanted to tell a leader he should understand that what he could do or destroy in one day can be comparable to what somebody does a whole year. Shouldn't think there's only one day that I'm a king. What is it already? It's just another day. I'll sleep through the day. When you're a melech, yoim echad b'shana, what you do in one day can have consequences of somebody else, even more than somebody else that works a whole year. There's a word from the Teves Shloime. He says that Erev Rosh Hashanah by Mincha, when do people daven Mincha Erev Rosh Hashanah? Some people daven early, but some people come to Shul, by Lichtzenden, and they daven Mincha. So it could be 2 minutes before Shkia, it could be 5 minutes before Shkia. Some people it could be after Shkia, for whatever the situation, whatever their shit is. What do you say in Mincha of Rosh Hashanah? Like every Mincha. Baruch Aleinu es Hashana hazois kol minis vasel toiva sabeinu mituva varich naseinu mavarich Hashana. He says, really? There's approximately 60 seconds left for the year. So you're making a bracha b'shem Malchus. You're saying Hashem's name. It's a serious thing, and you're saying bless the year and the produce and the grains. A blessed year, huh? For after Shkia. So he's saying it's the next year, yeah. So he says the Chapshat, he said is a Pshat, as in 5 minutes, kann man mesaken sein der ganze Jahr. In 5 minutes you could fix a whole year. Yoim Echad B'Shana is Chashav Shana. Huh? Miktasayam Kekula, yeah. Even if the king becomes a king 10 minutes before Shkia on Chavtes Adar, yeah. So he's a king for 10 minutes. It's already a year. Shana Yar. Huh?
It means that all this year that we have in Navi, in Navi we have he ruled for 13 years. It's not after 13 years. It can be 12 years in one day.
Yeah. Huh? Kind of Shach. Yeah. The Rebbe Lozer ben Derdaya. The Balatanya once said, Zummer dike Tag und a Winter dike Nacht is a Jahr. A summer day and a winter night is a year. Okay, sag the Gemarah weiter. So that's what we learned from it. Hashana Malachim and Yom Echad B'Shana Chashav Shana. Rashi says, "My kamashmalon loiger sinan ela kamashmalon isn't Hashana LaMalachim." The Gemara is not asking a question. My kamashmalon. The Gemara is just saying, as a davar pasha, that these are the two chidushim of the Mishnah. They say a cute story that there was once the Satmar Rebbe, the Divrei Yoel, with Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky at a Asif in the early years. So it was already late after Shkia. But by the Hungarian Yidden, they go with the second Shkia. So Mela after Shkia for Rabbi Yaakov wasn't after Shkia for the Satmar Rebbe. And he wanted to make a minyan for Mincha. So he said, either drink David Mincha. It was quite dark outside. So he says, Heint noch nicht. He said, today, not yet. Okay, sagt die Gemarah, ve'im loy amad ela be'echad b'nissen ein moinin loy shonat she'yagia nissen acher. The next piece of the brisa was, if he became a king echad b'nissen, Itaka has a full year. Frag the Gemarah, this is pshita. You already said that the second year starts under Chodesh Nissen, even if you became a king of Tes others. Of course, if you became a king Rosh Chodesh Nissen, of course Rosh Chodesh Nissen becomes your second year. Even without the Mishnah, Rosh Hashanah L'Malachim would become your second year. And for the Gemarah, what do you need this part of the Brisa? This is a Davar Pasha. He became a king Rosh Chodesh Nissen. The next Rosh Chodesh Nissen, he's the second year. Even you don't need a Mishnah for that. You don't need a Rosh Hashanah for that. It's the emes asay. And for the Gemarah Lo Tzricha, the Imnu Alei Me Ader. Now in America we can appreciate this answer. The pshat is he was already elected. He was already voted in Adar. So the question is a president-elect a gedder of a president? Imnu Alei, they already voted for him in Adar. So in Adar already he was the new king. He was the new president. So you might think, even though in Mitzias he's not acting as the melech because his term begins on Rosh Chodesh Nissen, but since for all practical purposes he's the man, all the interviews are focused on him, not on the old king. The pshat is it doesn't work that way. A king is a king. Elections and focus and attention, but ultimately, imnu alei me'ader doesn't do the job. Rashi says, imnu alei nimnu v'gamru hasarim limnoisa. In Rashi's days, the concept of a real democracy where the people completely elect a king was very, very rare. So he actually does here the system the way it was in Rome, that the Senate had to appoint the Caesar, the emperor. So that's what he says, Nimnu v'gamru hasarim l'menoisai. The point is he was voted in by the sarim, by the ministers in the month of Adar. Mao the Taim, I would say, Nimnu le tartenshnin. You should count 2 years. In other words, from the day that they voted him in, that's when the Malacca should start in Rosh Chodesh Nisan as a second year. Kamash Malon, you don't do that. You have to look at the day that he became a Melech. And the Vart is, it's a Gedank. And that is, that is the position of a Melech, when you actually become, that creates a different person. It creates a different identity in the person, even with all the preparations and this, it's not the same. Yeah. The Leiv Malachim V'Sarim, etc. And even in Hergish, in a person's Hergish, the day the person becomes a Melech, even though, of course, it was all because the person was voted in, but nonetheless, something is transformed. Something is transformed in that situation. Even though you don't learn anything new on that day, but just the metzias, the circumstances, the uniform, it turns you into a different person. Zog the Gemarah, Toner Rabbana, another Bryce, Meis Ba'adar. If a king died in the month of Adar, V'amad Acher Tachtav Ba'adar. So now a new king became a king instead of him in Adar. Now what do? Till Adar, you were writing a shtar, and you were writing, let's say, this is the 11th year of this particular king. He dies in Adar, so they appoint now a new king in Adar. Now you're writing a document after that. So the Brisa says, Moinin Shana Lazeh V'Lazeh. You can count the year either for the first one who died already, finish the year with him, or for the new one, for the second king.
As the first year.
As his first year, of course. Rashi says, Lazeh V'Lazeh, Haba Lichtav Shtar Ba'adeh La'achar Sha'amad Hasheni, and this is important. If you're writing a shtar when the first one was alive, of course you're not writing for the second one, he's still alive. We're talking about, if you write a shtar after the first one died, there was no second one, you don't have a second one. We're talking about Rashi's Medayik. We're talking about a situation that the second king became a king. Let's say on Purim. Now what do? Imratza lichtav b'shtar b'shnas ploini lemelech shemeis kaisef. You want to write in your document this year for the melech who died, even though he died already, he's deceased, you could do it. V'imratza kaisef b'shana rishayna lemelech ploini shamad. Or you could write b'shana rishayna for the melech that is amad. This wouldn't be a compromise of Shalom Malchus, because you're honoring the king, who was a king throughout this year, and therefore you're finishing off the year with him. This is one part of the Bryce. What happens weiter? Meis ben Nissen. What if the king dies in Nissen? So he already had a new year with him. V'amad acher tachtav ben Nissen. A new king is appointed after him as his successor in Nissen. And this doesn't only mean Nissen, this means Nissen, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, all the way down the year. Moinin Shana Lazeh V'Lazeh. If you want to write a shtar that year after the second king was appointed, again, you could write the year of the first king who died, or the year of the second king who became a king in the month of Nisan. Rashi says, Meis ben Nisan v'amad acher tachtav ben Nisan. Who adin? It's not only in Adar. Why would you think it's different? Okay, we'll see in a minute. Adar is the end of the year, Nisan is the beginning of the year. In other words, in Adar, you're already finishing off with this king. He dies on Purim, you give him another 15 days of grace, bisma bagraptem, till you put him in Wikipedia forever. You give him another 15 days. The Chiddush is, even in Nisan, he dies on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So Rosh Chodesh Nisan, if you would have written a document in the morning, you would have written the 12th year of this king, but now he died. So the Chiddush is, Im Amad Be'echad Mikol HaChadashim Sha'ad Nisan Haba. A new king takes over any month till the next Nisan. V'roitza limna is B'chol Ashtaras Sheyichtavu Misha'amad Hasheni L'minyan Shnois HaRishon Moina. Oh, you could write in all the documents from when the second person became a king. You could write Minyan Shnoiser, so it's a Chiddush. He dies Rosh Chodesh Nisan. You're writing a document Rosh Chodesh Adar. It's already almost a year that he's gone, but you could write, it's the 11th year of that king who's already gone 11 months, because it's his year, because he went into that year. So it's a much bigger Chiddush than Adar. In Adar, it's just the last few days. Here, it's a whole year without him, but you give it to him. Of course, you can also write, it's the first year of the new king. That's also not a problem. Next situation, Meis ba'Adar, if he dies in Adar, va'amad acher tachtav ben Nisan. It took a few weeks till they got a new king, or maybe it happened at the end of Adar. So the new king only came in Nisan. Now what do? So he says, now, moinin rishayna l'rishon, and shvishniya l'sheni. So now, the first year you have to write, in other words, the first year means till the end of Adar, you have to write the first king, because there was no other king. And of course, the next year in Nisan, you have to write for the new king, for the second king. You can't here do both. In Adar, there's only one king, even after he died, because there's no new king. And in Nisan, there's only a new king. So once Nisan comes, you have to write the date of the year of the new king, which is, of course, his first year. The question would be, if he becomes a melech in the middle of Nisan, so what do you write between Rosh Chodesh Nisan and the middle of Nisan? you don't have a second king yet. If he becomes a king, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, perfect. When he becomes a king in the middle of Nisan, it takes sometimes a time to get a new king. So what would you do then? So it's not so clear what would you do. The Sfas Emes says that you would write the king that died. You would do the next year of the king who died because there's no other king, so you do him. The Ohr Chaim says no. Huh?
It's still the first year from him from this.
No, but let's say you write a Shtar Rosh Chodesh Nisan and there's no new king yet. So who do you write? Shana Rishayna for what? So the Sfas Emes says you would write still for the dead king. The Ohr Chaim says no, you would go to Brias Ha'olam. There's no issue of Shalom Malchus here. Huh?
We write 12th year?
Yeah, a new year for the one who died. The Ohr Chaim says no, you can't do that. You would go back to Brias Ha'olam. You would go just back to the creation of the world, and you ignore the concept of Malacca because you don't have a tfisa, you don't have what to write. It's not clear. The Gemara doesn't make it clear. Rashi says, Shniya l'sheni, habal lichtav misha'amad zelo yimna shana shniya l'melech shemeis. Why? She'ein shana zu shaloi. It's not his year. It's already after the Lachir HaMaisi. He passed, he died already. She'ein shana zu shaloi. It's not his anymore. You don't own it anymore. It's not his. V'lo yimna sarishayna l'sheni. And you can't give other to the second one. Likris shana sha'amad bashniya. Ela shniya zu. Okay, that goes with Sionim, he wants to be good as shana. Okay, shniya ela shana zu rishayna l'sheni. This second year is the first one for the second king. Zog the Gemarah, Omar Mar. The Gemarah is now going to analyze the Brisa. The master said, if he died in Adar and the new king became a king in Adar, you could count the year for both. Pshita, L'chayr, it's Pashat. What's Pashat? It's Pashat that you could, the second case is L'chayr Pashat, that you could count Adar as the first year for the new king because he became a king already. The fact that Rashash says that the fact that you could count for the old king, that's a chiddush. That's not pshita, because the guy died already. The guy died, how can I write in my document it's the 11th year of his kingdom? He's not here. That's not pshita. The second thing is pshita, that you could write for the second king. He's mamash the king now. Why would you think not? Zog the Gemarah, Mao de Teima, I would have thought, Shata lebeitrei loy manina. You know, just like Ein Shnei Malachim Mishtamshem B'Keser Echad. Two kings can't use one crown. Two chefs spoil the pot. You would think you can't count 1 year for two kings. Shata, a year, lebeit today, for two monarchs, for two kings, loimanin, and you don't count. In other words, if it's his year, it's not his year. If it's his year, it's not his year. Since the beginning of the year was the first melech, so you cannot suddenly, in the middle of the year, give it to a new king. That's what we would have thought. Huh?
Before was the brighter, now we have...
He explains what's the chiddush in the Brais.
What should we do? But the amount of time, and what's the harm in understand? Why shouldn't we do that?
Why we shouldn't have Shatul Beit today?
What would you do? Then you go back to Bris Olam at that time frame?
L'chayra. You would go back to Brias Olam, yeah. Because you can't give it to a new year. Rashi says, Mishenichnas ba ha-melech shemeis afilu yoyim echad. Once the melech who died went into this year even one day, lo yichtavu kol shana zu b'shtar leminyan melech ha'omed ela lemelech ha-meis. Even if he died in the middle of the year, he died in Kislev, till the end of the year, you can't give it to a new melech. And from Rashi, it's mashma, you give it to this melech ha-meis. Right. You don't give it to any other king. That's what you would think. Right. Kamash Malon, no, it's not a problem. We don't care if you change in the middle of the year, like in this case, in the middle of Adar.
You don't care about the new king.
That's what we do.
There is no king. That's when you say you go back to Brias Olam.
Yeah.
Now, when there is a new king, you write it to the old king after the new
We'll soon see how it changed and why it changed.
Yeah.
No, then it had to be written.
There isn't a new king.
Saying if someone wrote then,
It was a takanas chachamim. It's at Shalom Malchus. It was a takanas chachamim.
that was still a shtar.
Question is
He didn't write it.
If
They wrote then.
When there
they
is a
wrote
new
then,
melech,
the
that's when you write Lamelech.
So we learned yesterday. If you'll take a look, you had to write it. You remember the second Tosfos Lamalach, and it actually says it would be possible. Next, Meis ben Nissen v'amad acher tachtav ben Nissen moinin shana lazeh v'lazeh. If he dies in Nissen and the next person comes in Nissen, a whole year you could do both. Pshita.
Are we doing it differently? I know we're afraid of other things.
Right, so because Tosfos said this is talking about Malchi Yisrael, it's Jewish kings, so therefore we have to have our own system.
But Rashi, it doesn't seem to say it's Malchi Yisrael.
So it's very hard to learn that Rashi says that because the Gemara clearly says later that Rosh Chodesh Nisan is from Malchi Yisrael. So that's why the Pnei Yeshua learns. So the Pnei Yeshua learns. So the Chidush Haran writes, and based on this, the Pnei Yeshua answers Rashi that the reason that Jews had to do it by Shalom Malchus, by non-Jews, is because they used to do it for Jewish kings. Because they used to do it for Jewish kings, so then when non-Jewish kings took over, if they would stop, it would compromise Shalom Malchus.
He's talking about non-Jewish kings.
So in other words,
and the lesson we learned.
no. So Shalom Malchus is just a proof that they used to do it for Jewish kings. But here we're talking about Jewish kings. Shalom Malchus is a proof that they used to do it because they didn't do it for Jewish kings. They said we didn't do it for our own. We should do it for others. If you did it for yours, you don't recognize us, you don't legitimize us. This would create a problem. But Lepile here we're talking about Jewish kings, so we have to have our own system. So now the second question is Meis benissen v'amad achet tachta benissen moinin shana l'zel a pshita. You could do both. You already said you could do 1 year for 2 malachim. Ma'od time I would think ki amlina yom echad b'shana chashav shana b'soif shan. When do you say 1 year during 1 day during the year is called a year if it's the end of the year? In other words, a melech who becomes a melech of Tes Adar and you count this day as a full year, that I understand. At the end of a year you say yom echad b'shana chashav shana. But you don't say 1 day is considered a year in the fact that if a melech was a king for 1 day, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you could say the whole year is his year. The end of a year, it's like, it's the final inning, the final stretch. So you say, okay, this is a whole year. You chap darain. But if you started Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's a whole year ahead of you. You understand? And we understand the chiluk between people. The last day of the year, from the Divrei Yoel, beseder? It says in Parshas Eikev about Eretz Yisrael, Eretz asher eini Hashem Elokecha bo mereishis Hashana va'ad acheris Shana. Eretz Yisrael is the land where Hashem's eyes are on it from the beginning of the year till the end of a year. Grammatically, you have a problem here. Either you say from the beginning of the year till the end of the year, or you say from the beginning of a year till the end of a year. You don't say from the beginning of the year till the end of a year. Either say Mereishis Hashana Vad Acheris Hashana, or say Mereishis Shana Vad Acheris Shana. So he touched as follows. He says that Ben Minig HaOlam is that in the beginning of a year, every Jew, the beginning of a year, the first day of the year, you say it's going to be the year. This is going to be the year. It's like you remember the first day in yeshiva, right? You remember the first day in yeshiva? Even though it's 15 years gepata the Zeit. But the first day, this is going to be, I'm going to steig away. That's what happens. It's going to be the year. There's not going to be a year like this. He says, then it comes the end of the year. You say, it was another year. Another year bites the dust. It says, Mereishis Hashana. Vad Acheris. By the end, it's just Hashana. It's another year because it's the last day. That's Pshat we say in Hu Elokeinu. Yeah. Henga Alti Eschem. Acheris Kivereishis. That the Acheris Shana should be like the Reishis Hashana. That even the last day, you should have the same hergish like the first day. This is going to be the year. So Mela, we understand the Vart. When it's the last day of the year, you realize there's no time left. So Mela, the intensity of it is very powerful. So Yom Echad B'Shana Chashav Shana. But everybody knows when you have 12 months ahead of you, what's the Gewalt? I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. So you might think, a Melech on Chavtes Adar, this is a year, because it's his year. But a Melech on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and then the next day he's gone, you can't say he ruled the whole year, it was just the beginning of the year. The Chiddush is, Yom Echad B'Shana Chashav Shana, even in the beginning of the year.
Throughout the history,
Depends which region. If it was in the north or in the south. Depends which region. But you don't mean only then. You mean Shol, David, and Shlomo.
after that.
Yeah, but you had by the Chashmonaim. The Chashmonaim. You had for 100 years after Chanukah, you had Malchi Chashmonaim, they ruled. Huh? Yeah. What? The Chashmonaim ruled. 100. Rambam says 100 years after Chanukah. Yeah. It's Beis Nisan. The old king died yesterday. Okay, that's an option. Yeah, but he's giving a simpler option. Yeah, sure, you can do that. Zog the Gemarah, next case. Meis ba'ader v'amad acher tachtav b'nissen moinin rishon l'rishon u'shniya l'shniya. Pshita, This Tachpashat. What do you want? In Adar there was no new king. In Nisan there was no old king. The Imnu Alei Me Adar. The new king they voted already in Adar. 1 second, but this you already told us that even though they voted him in Adar, you have to wait for Nisan. So he says, but there's another point here. Umelech ben Melech. He's a king, the son of a king. Here I would say maybe you could count it already as 2 years. His father died in Adar. They voted him in Adar. But I know that's not enough. But he's also a Melech ben Melech. A Melech ben Melech means Malchus is Yerusha. And because it's Yerusha, it naturally, unless he's inappropriate, he's not worthy, he's not suitable for the job. But if he's suitable for the job, so Malchus is Yerusha. Like most positions, as the Rambam brings in Hilchos Malachim, it goes over from father to son. Again, unless he's not suitable for the job. I emphasize that. What?
There's still elections, even if it's a melech or melech.
If the Olam doesn't want, it's not going to work.
Ein Melech blo.
A melech beloyam. Yeah, it's not going to work. I mean, unless he's going to be a dictator,
Stalin.
which works for some people some of the time. So you would think, because of these two situations, he was voted in Adar. Plus, he's a melech ben melech, and the word of a melech ben melech of Yerusha is. There's a shitta in the Rakachava explains the Gemarah in Baba Basra that the concept of Yerusha from a ben ta'av. He brings a raya from the Gemara. It's not even called a shinur reshus. It's not even called a change of domains from father to son, because the ben is etzem ha'af. Since a child is rooted in the essence of the father, so in many ways it's not considered even a shinur reshus from one domain to another domain. It's the father himself, so to speak, continuing through the child. So you might think there's absolutely no hefsek, even though the date that he becomes a melech is Nisan. But you can already count him in Adar. Kamash Malan, no. Even in this situation, until he doesn't become a melech b'poyel, it's not the same category.
What's the need for a vote to be between his two sons? Or
Why do they need a vote?
if it's a Yerusha and he's worthy and he's going to be king
Yeah,
at the end?
obviously could be there was a machlaikas.
Or it makes it, it's a more, shows that you have confidence in him.
I mean, the Rambam brings ein moishchin melech ben melech, because it's Yerusha. So you ask, so why was Shloimeh nimshach? And he says, because of Adoniyahu. Since Adoniyahu contested Shloimeh's position, right? So therefore you had to do a special Mashiach anointment for Shloimeh HaMelech, even though he was a natural son of David, because it wasn't a natural there, because there were other problems. Rashi knew what a king was.
He
What do you
said-
think?
he said
Everybody
he
knew.
went to
Only we
Rome.
don't know what kings are.
He's talking about
And
Rome.
we may find out soon, huh?
He said before he's talking about the system of Rome.
Roman style.
No, I was just saying the system of the Sarim appointing was the way it was done in Rome,
Yeah, because in France there's
which is this time. This is
And in Rashi time, there's no Malacca
the
Yisrael.
Mishnah was written under Rome. By Rashi there was already no.
There's no Malacca Yisrael anymore.
Yeah,
So
for
there's
sure.
no- The war, I mean.
Not by the Mishnah. By the Mishnah was
He
already.
knew what
the
it
Toninos.
was.
the public government
Yeah.
is already gone through.
Hey, in Spain,
Yeah.
he even
I mean, the Rebbe was
Antoninos.
right, but he was still considered a Rossi.
Yeah. So the Gemarah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, "Minayin lemelachim shein moinin le'melaminis." Now we get to the very crux of the question. What's up, business? I understand you need a Rosh Hashanah, you want a cut-off date, he's a new king, you shouldn't have all the confusions, Rashi Teves. Why not Rosh Chodesh Tishrei? Why not Rosh Chodesh Adar? What's up, business? Zog the Gemarah, Rabbi Yochanan explains why Chazal decided Rosh Hashanah lemelachim is nis. Shenemar, we come now to a pasuk in Melachim, Aleph, Perik, Vav, Shloimeh HaMelech builds the first Beis HaMikdash. Now let's remember, the Jewish people left Mitzrayim in the year 2448 since creation. 2448 since creation. 1313 BCE, before the Common Era. Okay. 40 years there in the Midbar. They come into Eretz Yisrael in the year 2488. Right? Yitzis Mitzrayim is Beis Alofim Tov Mem Ches, and coming into Eretz Yisrael is Beis Alofim Tov Pei Ches. 2488, 40 years later. For a few hundred years there's no Beis HaMikdash. They have a Mishkan, and the Mishkan wanders from one place to another place. The Mishkan is in the Mishkan is first in Gilgal, you have a Mishkan in Noiv, you have a Mishkan in Givon, you have a Mishkan for 369 years in Shiloh, which is not in Yerushalayim, it's the area of Yosef.
But Givain.
Huh?
Givain.
Yeah. Shloimeh HaMelech builds the first Beis HaMikdash hundreds of years after coming into Eretz Yisrael. We'll soon see the exact date. Of course, for those few hundred years, you also don't have kings. What you have is a system that we call shoftim, judges, leaders, described in Yehoshua and shoftim. The first king is Shaul HaMelech, which is just 2 generations before Shlomo. So the pasuk now describes the date. Vayhi b'shmoinim shana, va'arba meyes shana l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael meretz Mitzrayim. It was 480 years since the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, which would mean, remember, they were 40 years in the desert. So this was 440 years since they came into Eretz Yisrael. 480 years since they left Mitzrayim. 440 years since they come into Eretz Yisrael. Bashana Hariviyas, in the fourth year of Shlomo's reign. B'chodesh Ziv, in the month which is called Ziv. Ziv means ray, light, a glimmer, like Ziv Ashchina. What's Ziv? Hu Chodesh Hasheni. This is the second month of the number of months, and the second month means what we call the month of Iyar.
On the fourth year.
And why do we call Chodesh Hasheni Chodesh Iyar? Because there's no question, everybody knows a pasuk in Boya, Chodesh Hazel Lechem, Rosh Chadashim, Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chotshei Hashana. So the first month is Nisan. So when the Tanakh says Chodesh Hasheni, we call it Iyar. Remember that the names of the months that we have did not exist in the times of the Tanakh. You will never have the name of a month. You will always have Chodesh Harishon. Rosh Hashanah is called Chodesh Hashvi Be'echad LaChodesh, right? The Gemara says Shmois HaChadashim Alu Imahim Mibavel. When the Jewish people came back from Babylonia, these are really Persian names. Nisan, Iyar, Siv, and Tammuz are all Persian names, not Jewish names. And they were oiler with them from Bavel. But then in the Tanakh's days there were no names. And the Ramban actually says the reason is because it's part of Leman Tisker Yom Tzeschem Eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha. It's part of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim. So therefore everything is based on Nisan. So Nisan is the first, and then Cheshvan is the eighth. The eighth of what? The eighth since Nisan, which is Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we didn't want names. He says, just like in Hebrew, there's no names for the weekdays. We don't have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It doesn't exist. All we have is Hayom Yom Rishon, Bashabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni. Why? It's all part of Zacharas Yom HaShabbos, to remember Shabbos. What's today? Today is a few days before Shabbos. It's the third day leading up to the seventh day. Third day from what? Third day from the first day leading up to the seventh day. So the same is with months. So Chodesh Hasheni is Chodesh Ziv is Iyar. The fourth year of Shlomo's reign. Hu HaChodesh Hasheni Limloich Shlomo Al Yisrael Vayiven Habayis Lashem. That's when he puts up the Beis Hamikdash for Hashem. That's when he builds it. Sagt Rabbi Yochanan a gewaltige Chiddush. What does the pasuk tell us here? The pasuk says that he builds the Beis Hamikdash. He starts building the Beis Hamikdash 480 years since Yetzias Mitzrayim, and 4 years, the fourth year since he became a king. Makish Malchus Shlomo Yetzias Mitzrayim. Is the pshat that the Torah, the Tanakh, is comparing. Makish means juxtaposing. It puts together the Malchus of Shlomo to the number of years of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Since it's in the same pasuk, whenever you have two things in the same pasuk, we have a concept called hekesh, which means, in English it's called juxtaposition. When two things are in one pasuk, so they're near each other, so you apply one to the other. So the pasuk here puts together Shlomo's Melucha and the number of years since Yetzias Mitzrayim. The number of years since he became a king and the number of years since we left Egypt. Why? So you could say that Tanakh wants to give two dates. It wants to give two references. One reference is from Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is very helpful, and one reference is from Shlomo's reign. But the concept of Hekesh means when two things are in one pasuk, you can compare them to each other. The Torah has an emphasis here. Ma Yetzias Mitzrayim min Nisan, af Malchus Shlomo min Nisan. It teaches you how you have to count Malchus Shlomo. It's obvious Yetzias Mitzrayim you count from where? From Nisan, because that's when it happened. So Malchus Shlomo starts from Nisan, the same thing. In other words, when do I start counting Malchus Shlomo? From which month? You'll say, well, when did he become a king? Tell me the day. He became a king, I don't know, on Hanukkah, start counting. Well, there was no Hanukkah. He became a king, Rosh Chodesh Kislev. No. It's just like Yetzias Mitzrayim, you start counting his Malchus from Nisan. Meaning, even if he became a king in Shvat, but Rosh Chodesh Nisan, you're going to start counting a new year of Malchus. So the fourth year is going to be always based on Nisan. Nisan.
Maybe he became a king of Chodesh Nisan, and that's why he counted.
Gewaldig. But then you don't need a Hekesh to Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Yeah, but then it'll be because he became Rosh Chodesh Nisan, but not that by every king like that. I think by him it was a tradition, so he counted.
You're saying it's not a din, but that's the vart of a hekesh. That's the vart of a hekesh, that the Torah wants to compare it to Yetzias Mitzrayim. In other words, it's not just a Metzias. If it would be a Metzias, you don't need a hekesh. The vart of a hekesh is that it's a din. The interesting thing here is, according to this, Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim is a Takanas Chachamim or a Pasuk in Tanakh. It's a funny thing, because
From Nevim.
Probably a smachta.
I'm saying Rashi in the Rashi Lamai Hilchasa, the first Rashi in the Gemarah. Rashi says, "Keloimar lama hukva yoim miyuchad laminyan hamalachim." Who was kaveya this? The Pashtus Takanas Chachamim. The Chachamim decided it's going to make problems. Let's make it a Shoshana l'Malachim. Here it's mashma. Already in the Zman of Shloimeh, the Tanakh was saying a din. That Shloimeh's Melucha starts like Yetzias Mitzrayim. It starts from Nisan. Mehechatesa. Starts whenever he became a Melech. It's mashma that it's a psadin in Tanakh that it's like a drasha Gemarah from Torah, not from Chumash, but from Malachim. David was nifter, very good. David meis batzeres.
Yeah, it could be.
So it wasn't Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And David already appointed him, so very good. So Shlomo couldn't be a king Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It was Shavuos.
How long before David passed to be appointed?
It says no, Sheva, the whole story, the Haftarah, yeah.
Right there.
So the Sifsei Chachamim writes that it's an asmachta. No, he didn't become a king Chodesh Hashem. The building of the Beis Hamikdash started by Chodesh Hasheni. He became a king Shavuos, or right after Shavuos. You understand? Because David died on Shavuos, but the building of the Beis Hamikdash. So either you could say it's an asmachta, or you could say maybe a little clearer that this is a din in Shloimeh. You don't necessarily have a din here in all the Malachim, huh?
You don't have a din in Shtaris. The Mishnah is talking about that they will masakin it then.
No, the Mainaf Kamina by Shloimeh that he became, that it's in Shoshana l'Malachim. The only Naf Kamina is for Shtaris. For anniversary parties. For the signs, for the signs. You need the Chanaf Kamina. So l'cha'ira you could say it's a din in Shloimeh. It's a din in Shloimeh. But the Chachamim will masakin it for all the Malachim, or you could say it's an asmachta, or you could say that it's a drasha Gemarah. It's mamish.
Would you want a din from Tanakh, from a pasuk in Tanakh?
Well, not a din of Taryag mitzvahs, but a din, yeah.
This is a din in Malchus when the rain begins. So that would.
Yeah, you could learn it. What? A Gili Milsa?
It's a Milsa Da'amani. It's a statement of fact. It's the Metzias of when this rain began. Rather than a din for
fine. Okay, so you're saying it's not a din in all the Malachim. Not a din in all the Malachim.
No, that was my question.
Right, so that's why you need Hakanas Chachamim. That's why you need Hakanas Chachamim. I should just say that Chidush Haran says there just a nice word. He says that it's not just a Hekesh, it's also a Hezber. Yetzias Mitzrayim allowed Jews to become leaders, allowed Jews to become kings. So that's why you count them from Nisan. Without Yetzias Mitzrayim, Jews would be slaves. A king is not a slave. A king, by definition, means your nation has autonomy, has a leader. The leader decides the course, not a foreign dictator. So, b'meila, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Shoshana l'Malachim, it's not just a hekesh. The Chidush Haran says it's a hezber. Because of Yetzias Mitzrayim, therefore, we're not mishabadim hayuna l'fadim b'Mitzrayim. And it's also the Even Ezra says. The Even Ezra asks in Shmois, why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu was raised by non-Jews? L'cha'ira, the first Jewish leader should have had an education among Jews. It's a strange thing that the Hashgacha decided that Moshe should not grow up among Jews, even though he's the first Jewish leader. You know, Moshe never saw what a Shalom Zacha looks like. He didn't know what herring tastes like. He didn't know what a Kiddush looks like. The whole Jewish culture, he didn't have. He grew up by Parah. So the Even Ezra writes in Shmoi Soid Hashem Li'Yereyav. In other words, he doesn't know the reason. But then he suggests two reasons. One reason, he says, is that if Moshe would have grown up among Jews, nobody would ever respect him. Because Jews don't know how to respect anybody that grows up among them. Ein Navi Be'ira, everybody would, that's what Even Ezra says, Ein Navi Be'ira. Everybody would tell Moshe, I remember your Shalom Zachar, I remember I used to cry, I remember your bris, I remember you running around in diapers. When did you become a Navi suddenly? Also, he came from non-Jews, so the Jews, they get very inspired. The second thing that Even Ezra says is very deep. He says that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have grown up among Jews, he would have always had a slave mentality. And he could never create a revolution. He couldn't change the world. For him to be able to take on Pare, he had to have Malchus de Kasagas. He had to have a Breitkeit. He grew up in a palace, he grew up in a mansion, so he thought big. If he would have grown up among slaves, he would have had a complex, he says. He would never be able to revolt. So the whole concept of Yitzias Mitzrayim allowed for the inyan of Malucha. That's why Moshe had to grow up by Malucha. That's wai you count it from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's considered the new year for the Melech.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.